All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 15th, 2023 school committee meeting. We'll get right to it. We're going to call the meeting to order and start going through our agenda. We're going to take it a little bit out of order just because we're missing one person. But we'll start with the consent agenda. And we have executive minutes and minutes from last week, which I have some changes to. What do we know we're going to do for changes? Well, so if you're going to, we need to put the list who voted how for all the votes that were taken in using remote participation.
So just make it clear what the changes to the rest of us.
Right, so, well, it's all the votes need to have names next to them, and then when you came into the meeting, we need to know the time when you came into the meeting, and then when you left the meeting, we need to know the time when you left the meeting. So I think we're going to hold those off, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Too many changes to.
Okay. So, and then for the executive session minutes, do we have any comments, concerns? Okay. So what I'll do is I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, taking out number 1, which was the minutes from June 1st, 2023.
Moved by Lisa.
Second by John.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. So we're going to then skip and go through policies, so the few policy changes that we have.
So now that I don't have the access to my computer, I probably need to. You think you can pull it up?
Susan, can you bring up the policy?
Trying.
Okay, thank you.
This is why it's
The policy,
No.
Zoom and everything.
the last one that we attended. So,
Which one are we doing first?
share the-
FF?
We'll just go through, FF.
put it- yeah, okay.
It's up on the screen if that helps.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So policy FF, naming of school property.
So do we read this one again, or
No, I think this
Yeah,
one is
we-
non-substantive changes,
yeah,
so all you
so-
have to do is,
is vote on
you
it?
don't have to, you don't even have to vote on it, it's more for information only when it's
Okay.
non-substantive.
So you don't think we need to have a vote on it?
You don't have to, but if you.
Okay, well, I'll
you're
entertain a
welcome to.
motion to approve the non-substantive changes to policy FF, naming of school property.
Second? Oh,
Moved by Lisa.
move, second by Minnie.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Moving on to JLTA, life-threatening allergies.
So this was, so this one was, so this one we were still talking about updating it because MSc doesn't have a guidance on this.
So is policy still, is it still under review?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still reviewing this, so we're not,
So
But I think it would be nice if somebody could probably read it, and maybe if anybody has any suggestions, we can add it here.
I did see that there was,
There's some changes that we struck some of this. So the changes are,
Sarah, you want to read it? Should we read the policy in totality?
I think because the changes are not non-substantive, you probably have to read the whole policy, is my understanding of the policy.
Okay, would you do it? Sure. Thank you.
Double thing.
that is policy.
All right. The Holliston Public Schools, HPS, recognizes the increasing prevalence of student allergies and the life-threatening nature of allergies for many students. The HPS administration has developed and implemented a policy and protocol to minimize the risk of exposure to allergens that pose a threat to students, to educate all members of the school committee on management of student allergies, and to plan for the needs of students with allergies. Further, the protocol will aim to provide age-appropriate procedures and to assist the children in assuming more individual responsibility for their health and safety as they grow older. The schools are committed to working with allergic students and their parents to address the students' emotional and social needs in addition to the health needs. Background. Allergic reactions vary among students and can range from mild to severe and life-threatening anaphylactic reactions. Anaphylaxis refers to a collection of symptoms affecting multiple systems in the body, the most dangerous of which are breathing difficulties and a drop in blood pressure or shock, which are potentially fatal.
No,
Oh,
you
sorry.
keep going. I was just.
Anaphylaxis may occur in allergic individuals after exposure to a specific allergen, even when prior exposure to the allergen has not resulted in symptoms. Anaphylaxis can occur immediately or several hours following allergen exposure. Some students who are very sensitive may react to just touching or inhaling the allergen. The most common causes of anaphylaxis in children include allergies to food, most commonly peanuts, tree nuts, milk, other dairy products, eggs, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. Insect stings, yellow jackets, bees, wasps, hornets, medications, and latex. Policy. The HPS recognizes the increasing prevalence of student allergies and the life-threatening nature of allergies for many students. The HPS administration shall develop and implement a protocol to minimize the risk of exposure to allergens that pose a threat to students, educate all members of the school committee on management of student allergies, and plan for the needs of students with allergies. Further, the protocol will aim to provide age-appropriate procedures and to assist children in assuming more individual responsibility for their health and safety as they grow older. The schools will work with allergic students and their parents to address the students' emotional and social needs in addition to their health needs. The protocol will include the following: education and training. HPS will provide education and training to all appropriate personnel on management of student allergies. The training will address allergy awareness and provide information about common allergens, recognition of the signs of an allergic reaction, epinephrine injector training, and the emergency response plan. Individualized planning and accommodations. An emergency health care plan that addresses management of anaphylaxis will be developed for each student with an allergy. These plans will be student-specific and may require additional procedures or protocols beyond those included in this policy. A copy of the emergency health care plan will be provided to the classroom teacher, unified arts teachers, specialists, and bus drivers for all preschool to grade 5 students, and to all core subject teachers for middle and high school students. A protocol will be developed to address how information about student allergies will be provided to other personnel responsible for students with life-threatening allergies, such as substitutes, cafeteria monitors, and recess monitors. The implementation of the district protocol and of the individualized plan for each allergic student requires a team approach and cooperation among administrators, nurses, teachers, food service personnel, and other staff members and parents, and the student as appropriate.
And then we're striking C, and that's
Yeah.
why the other things were non-substantive, but this, because this is being removed, that's more substantive.
And why is C being removed?
Because, if I recall, do you remember, because you and Missy talked about it.
Food is not, per the health policy, is not allowed in schools
Right.
to be brought in. So that's been the policy, I think, for quite
Right,
some
because they can't bring it in anyhow, it was unnecessary to have it in there. Any food that, like snacks or things, if a child comes in without a snack, they can get a snack. Then the nurses will check out to make sure they don't have an allergen.
I think the worry was that it sends a mixed message by having that in there, and then earlier on it says no food to be brought in, so it's...
Okay.
So a few years ago, we used to be able to bring in classroom food and the nurse would check it and then it would go to the classroom. We don't do that anymore.
She's saying...
It's just becoming so complex and so many more
Okay.
allergies, so the
Okay.
nurses can't really manage it as well, so they're avoiding that whenever possible.
Okay.
Pretty much,
Yep.
yeah.
Makes total sense.
Classroom management procedures. Appropriate accommodations will be made in the classroom as necessary. Procedures will address education of parents, guardians, and students, and planning for special events involving food. The protocol will allow for age-appropriate classroom rules. For preschool to grade 5 students, the nurse, in collaboration with the classroom teacher and with input from the parents of the food allergic child, will develop a classroom-specific protocol regarding the management of food in the classroom. All school administrators will facilitate and support the accommodations when required for individual classrooms, team classrooms, specialist classrooms, and common areas. Common use areas. The protocol will address foods used in common areas and cleaning of those areas, including use of those areas by groups other than students. kitchen, and cafeteria procedures. The food service staff must make reasonable efforts to ensure that all food items offered to a student with life-threatening allergies are free of suspected allergens. Kitchen and dining room practices will be aimed at minimizing the cross-contamination of foods. Dining room procedures must address proper oversight and cleaning of designated allergen areas. Transportation procedures. School buses and vans must have a working means of two-way communication and a plan to check the communication system periodically. Bus and van drivers and substitutes must have an emergency response plan and be trained in the proper use of an epinephrine injector. Parents of students with life-threatening allergies will be encouraged to inform bus and van drivers about student allergies. The eating and sharing of food will be prohibited on transportation routes unless medically indicated for a student. Field trip procedures. Planning for field trips will include plans to implement a student's emergency health care plan, plans for carrying an epinephrine injector as needed, and plans for emergency response, such as identification of the nearest medical facility. The school nurse or an epinephrine injector trained employee designated by the school nurse will attend field trips, including a student with life-threatening allergy in the event their parent or guardian is not attending. Emergency response procedures. All staff members and supervising students with life-threatening allergies must have a means of communication to call for assistance. The school nurse or other school staff member trained to administer epinephrine in accordance with the Department of Public Health Regulation 105 CMR 210.000 must be available in each school facility during the school day. The protocol must provide for the management of anaphylaxis in individuals with unknown allergies, including an authorization for administration of epinephrine by the school nurse signed by a school physician. Procedures for handling epinephrine. Each school must maintain a current supply of epinephrine by auto-injector and must comply with all Department of Public Health regulations for administration, storage, and record-keeping concerning epinephrine. The school nurse shall register with the Department of Public Health and shall train other school personnel to administer epinephrine in accordance with the Department of Public Health Regulation 105 CMR 210. All staff members will be informed of the location of the epinephrine injectors.
Thank you, Sarah. Any comments, questions?
I'm wondering if in section B, we should say a copy of the emergency healthcare plan will be provided to the classroom teacher, unified arts teachers, specialists, and bus drivers for all preschool to grade 5. I'm wondering if we should include paraprofessionals in there, because I'm wondering particularly when a kid has a one-to-one, probably more of a question for Jess. But that's just, because specialists I don't think includes paraprofessionals.
Correct. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think given that they are working directly, I would say probably more the one-on-ones, but I think even if you're in the classroom with a student, you should have that access, so that would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar to an IEP.
Do you want to put it after specialists?
Sure. Yeah, anywhere.
That's a good catch. Any other comments? So we'll consider that a first reading. I don't think we don't vote on the first reading, right? We just
Well,
consider
it's an amendment versus a new policy. Do we have to still do 3 readings?
per policy. You have to do one. You can then waive the second and the third. And I didn't think
On
we
an
were-
amendment?
I didn't, yeah, on an amendment. I didn't think we were done with this either. but there-
Yeah, we are not done. It's
Right.
still under
Okay.
review. Yep.
But we could change the date and do a first at the bottom.
Right. I think we should consider this a
Today's
first
date.
reading of the amendment.
Does somebody want to add, well, after we vote, does somebody want to add today's date on first reading?
Do we vote on the first reading?
Oh, I thought we did.
We do? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion then to accept the first reading of policy JLTA, the amendment to the life-threatening allergies.
Moved by Minnie.
Seconded by Lisa.
All in favor? Aye. Okay,
I'll
the first
advocate.
reading sails through. Now to KCD, which is public gifts to schools. And I apologize, Dr. Custer pointed out that
Go back one now. KCD.
Cynthia, who is the policy chair, did send some notes on this. And so this is this revision reflects a significant change in state law requiring the school committee to approve any gifts to the district. Our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations plans to work on a procedure for approval of these gifts, which will be included as part of the consent agenda under normal circumstances. Previous practice was to approve any gifts over $1,000. Homemade items and food are not considered gifts. Just noting that to everyone. Food
It's not?
is not considered a gift, so they can give us food.
That's good to know. Because that was something that actually came up. People were
Yep.
like,
No,
oh,
that is a-
juice boxes and all of that.
Yep. Well, but you can't necessarily bring food into school.
There was an exception for class gifts, right, where it's not from an individual. Do we still have anything like that?
I think that's in a different policy.
Does
This
it
is-
reference that other policy?
Let me
and do
just
they
double check on the
conflict? Don't they
bottom.
conflict?
This is not, gifts to individuals are actually governed, I think there is a policy, but gifts to individuals are governed in class
That's
gifts.
under the Mass State Ethics
Mass State
policy.
Ethics. So it's $50 to individuals, $150
Yeah.
as a class gift.
Right, so this is.
But this is gifts to the town,
Just
the
to the
school district.
in general, okay.
Right. And
This
some,
is just noting that we own
Okay.
anything that's given, which is
right. But
it's supposed to remain.
it can also sort of be gifts in sort of someone's name for their use, kind of thing, so.
Okay.
So now, is this the first, we're updating, this is a complete rewrite, but I think,
Because they changed some rules here,
right,
I think you're
right?
probably better off going to at least the second reading and you can waive them.
Yeah, because I think Keith is not here. He's better, like,
Okay.
he needed to put in some inputs, but I don't see anything. So we
well,
will,
it does say the policy was reviewed on April 27th, so did we already review it?
yeah. we are
The
reviewing it.
subcommittee did.
Yeah, the subcommittee
Not the
did.
full committee.
That's the policy reviews for the subcommittee, okay. So then do we want, well, we need to read it. Short,
Okay, I can read it. Unless- okay. Public gifts to the school, KCD. In accordance with state law, all grants and gifts to the Holliston Public Schools shall be reviewed and accepted by the Holliston School Committee before expenditure or use. In the case of gifts from industry, business, or special interest groups, no extensive advertising or promotion may be involved in any donation to the schools. Gifts will automatically become the property of the HPS. Any gift of cash, regardless of donor intent, will be accepted by vote of the Holliston School Committee, kept separate from the general fund, and expended at the discretion of the committee as provided by law. The committee directs the superintendent or designee to assure that an appropriate expression of thanks is given to all donors.
okay. Do you have any questions, comments, changes?
I think just since Keith's not here, I'll just speak to the fact that this policy did not align with Mass General Law, and since Mass General Law requires this, we had to realign the policy to that.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to, I guess, accept the second reading of this, and
This is the first reading, right?
or just, I'm sorry, I apologize, yes, the first reading of this.
Yeah, because this was subcommittee.
Yeah.
Right, so we can just now move it to the second reading for next
Yeah.
time, and then you can decide to vote at that time if you want to waive the third reading.
Okay. So,
I can put that away.
a motion
unless there's
to,
any-
entertain a motion to accept the first reading.
Moved by Dawn,
Second by Minnie.
All in favor? All right. So why don't we, since we just did that, and Amanda just said that she's on her way, why don't we,
We can go down and move up. We went to Capitol Hill. I just have to.
sure, why don't we do that? We'll do the Capitol Hill update.
Yeah, again, can you pull up? So Cynthia, it's on your policy, so Cynthia.
So you went to the MASC day
A
on
document.
the Hill with
Should be
Cynthia.
there, if not.
I'm sorry, which section?
The last one.
Drive, search Capitol Hill, then drive and see if something comes up. Sorry, I'll have to do this.
I don't know if we can bring it up. Do you want to just talk about it, Minnie? Or is it-
Yeah, so. Give me just one second. I just need to check the data.
4th.
Okay, so we went to, Cynthia and I went to Capitol Hill, and then it was an MSc. Give me a second, I just need to put it up.
I just forwarded that to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
It's taking forever to arrive.
Sorry about this.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we went to attend the annual MSc Day on the Hill Advocacy on May 4th, 2023. So it was in a beautiful hall. We had several presenters who offered their thoughts on the state of education and various challenges districts are facing across the state. Many of the issues that they spoke about that day was actually pretty relevant to what Holliston is facing as well. So we had issues about staffing, curriculum challenges, contract negotiations, budget concerns, and there was a pretty significant segment about special education increases. So we were also then treated to a fabulous lunch, which was done by the vocational schools, including Keith Tech. So there's a note about a lemon mousse. Honestly, it was the best thing I've had. It had poppy seeds. So it was wonderful. It was so good that I actually brought one home and shared it, and my boys went like, oh my God. So yeah, it was really good. So then we had a meeting with the Senate President's staff. Unfortunately, the Senate President was in session, and her staff was completely unaware that we were actually having that advocacy day. Cynthia emailed them prior, but historically, typically what happens is that they are always willing to meet on such days, but they didn't even know that we were there. But anyway, we went on to meet Susan, Nicole, and Jessica, and Mamia. They were all with us. So we were joined by the Tri-County Regional Schools, and the main conversation was about the MSBA funding. With a current cap of $800 million annually available for school building projects, it is insufficient to manage the backlog of projects and those currently in the pipeline. Many of the vocational schools across the state were originally funded by the state and federal funds in order to offset the local impact on member districts. They estimated that it would cost between $300 to $350 million in order to build a new vocational school, and theirs is crumbling. This is the local concern because Keith Tech is also in this pipeline, but with a limited budget available, only a limited number of projects can be addressed. So to this end, Holliston has also submitted an SOI 5 times to the MSBA, and we feel frustrated that we have not been invited into the process given the limitations on teaching and learning in the current building. We are faced with considering spending good money over bad to address needed projects totaling over $12 million, which still won't address the fact that we have interior classrooms with no windows. We confirmed again with their support for universal free meals for all students and our grave concerns about rising special education costs, and the current legislation seeks to remedy the funding issue, including a 90% reimbursement rate, currently at 75%, and 25% lower threshold for reimbursement. Approved cost threshold in Holliston is approximately $47K. Not every district is able to weather the storm of a sudden $500K increase in a single year without having to make significant cuts to staff or programming. Holliston will be able to address this funding issue due to sound fiscal management by Mr. Boudet, but We are unclear about how we will address this in subsequent years without legislative efforts. So Susan Nicole also confirmed the 150K request from Travis Ahern on behalf of HPS regarding a multifunction small bus for transition program, athletics, and activities. So Cynthia requested the Senate President to take a second look at offering tenure credits for educators who worked in person during the pandemic emergency. This would offer educators the ability to retire earlier. Holliston did not offer bonuses to any town employees during the pandemic, with concerns over assigning essential status, among other concerns. So we left the meetings with plans to schedule a follow-up meeting with the Senate President next fall, perhaps with our colleagues from our representative districts like we used to do in before times. So,
Thank you, Minnie.
You're welcome.
Any comments, questions?
I was just going to say, I think that the tenure piece to be able to award extra tenure to teachers and people that worked through that pandemic when other places weren't would be wonderful. I don't know if the legislature would be able to fund that, but that would give people additional credit, and they might be able to retire, early retirement incentive, which for people that had to go through that 2-year stress like we all did.
Agree with that.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Amanda. I know we're not a school committee comment yet, but do you have any
Some news that just happened.
Any news that just happened to you?
Yes, I do, actually. The girls' 5th grade soccer team, Holliston United, just beat Canton in round 1 of the President's Cup. There was an upset. They were the underdogs. They'll be going on to the finals on Saturday versus Wellesley. This is in Division 1A.
Congratulations. That's great. So, moving on to communications and introductions to our new, to the incoming new 2023-2024 administrative staff. Susan?
So I would like to welcome our new high school principal, Mr. David List, up to the table so that he can share a little bit himself, along with, we have our assistant principal, Karen Manning, at Rams, joining us tonight, and we have Lisa Robinson, our new SSA at Placentino. Unfortunately, Ron Taylor, our other assistant principal at the high school, is unable to join us, but I'd love you to come up. We're delighted to start working with them as of July 1st, even though they've been on campus a bit already. So please tell us a little bit about yourselves, and we're excited to get to know you better.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Robinson, the newly appointed SSA for San Placentino Elementary Pre-K through 2 elementary school. I'm very excited to join the team there and to work with a strong building leadership team and amazing colleagues, teachers, specialists, nurses, paraprofessionals. I'm coming from Sharon, where I was the early childhood coordinator and have experience in early childhood since I started education a while ago. I was a co-teacher in an inclusion class when that was in 1997, when it was relatively new, and it's been my passion ever since to include children with disabilities alongside their non-disabled peers. I had the opportunity to see how much students learn and how much they thrive. And also, I am very passionate about diversity and equity and making sure that all children have access to what they need to learn. And I'm looking forward to this journey. And thank you very much for having me.
And
it will be an honor to serve in this community because I'm also a resident of Holliston.
And Lisa, I don't think I shared this when I interviewed you, but I hope that the Placentino administration reminded you need to bring your sneakers because you'll be on the run a little bit with your preschool population.
That is good news, because I was just saying when I got here that prior to going home, having that opportunity to do that, I was in my sneakers. And sneakers are pretty much my daily outfit. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen Manning. I'm the new assistant principal at Rams, and I'm coming from Cape Cod, Monomoy, probably not heard of it. It's Harwich and Chatham together. I've been teaching since the 1900s, that's what my students like to say. I've also been an administrator at both a middle school and business school. So This new adventure, this new chapter is me coming back into administration from teaching. I teach 8th grade right now. That is mostly where I've spent my teaching career. I love the middle. I can't wait to work with the middle school kids at Rams and the administrative team. I've had the pleasure of meeting several teachers and professional staff there. Everyone seems wonderful. The community seems very welcoming, and I'm happy to touch base with any of you and chat further. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have beaches here too, though. Yeah.
I think you just went up to Medway already with the beaches. There you go. So. My name is David List, joining Holliston as the principal of the high school, coming all the way from Medway, Massachusetts, where I was the assistant principal for the past 8 years there. It has been, it's truly humbling getting the opportunity to take this role. And the past week, been able to spend 3 full days at the high school, meeting with administration, students, and staff. They've been incredibly welcoming, incredibly kind, and shared so much of the rich history of the academic excellence, but also, more importantly, the relationships. I think I heard more about that over the past week than anything else, was about how much the students, the teachers, the families care for each other in this community. I am so thankful to the administration of the high school, who have welcomed me in and sort of tried to download everything to me. I'm still trying to process it all. But I just look forward to the opportunity of working with everybody, to reaching out and working within the community itself, getting to know all the teachers and spending a lot of time listening, because I've really gotten to hear about this amazing place, Holliston High School. And I also will be wearing sneakers every day. So, that's just, so thank you all for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it.
And I'll just share, I already shared with Mr. List that when I was having my last high school advisory meeting, about 25 students showed up, and it's because it's the end of the year, they had a little less DSB needs, and it was a bunch of our outgoing seniors, and we had a wonderful conversation, and then they said, even though we're leaving, we want to get to know the new principal, we want to be able to share our feedback to help him moving forward. And I said, great, so he and I are meeting with some of our outgoing seniors, and then our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that will come on Tuesday afternoon. So we're excited to get to introduce you to outgoing and incoming.
Absolutely, and I will be around all summer. My whole family's away at sleepaway camp, so so that is my vacation. So please come in and tell me a little bit about the place, and I'm more than happy to. You'll come and ask me questions, and I've got a ton more for you than you probably have for me. So I appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. Welcome.
Thank you all very much.
And with that, I think, welcome and thank you.
You're welcome to adjourn.
Yes. So moving on, I don't see our student representatives.
No, I don't think they were able to make it this week
Okay.
with exams.
That makes a lot of sense. That's much certainly more important. So moving on, we'll go to HMAPA with Terry Chamberlain.
Good evening. Terry Chamberlain. I'm the outgoing president of HMAPA, the Holliston Music and Arts Parents Association. I just wanted to start by saying that the arts are essential to our children's development. Multiple studies have demonstrated this, reinforcing the connection between arts participation and learning in core subjects. Children find success and they find themselves in the arts. This has become even more crucial in post-pandemic times when our students are still struggling with stress and anxiety. The arts provide safe spaces for our children to express themselves through painting, sculpture, digital art, creating music with instruments or their own voices, developing and performing a character in plays or musicals. Even the techies or backstage crews create art through light design, sound design, makeup, costumes, set design, and set dressing. So our music programs are still recovering from the effects of COVID, but to put it in sports terms, these are rebuilding years. The number of students participating in band and chorus at the elementary level is evidence that interest is strong, and that will carry over to the middle and high schools in a few short years. So some of the issues and concerns that I wanted to address tonight are, starting with the high school. While we are very happy that the band teacher position has finally been raised back to a full-time position, it should not have been at the expense of the chorus teacher position. Both of these positions should be 1.0. Additionally, of more immediate concern is finding a director for Theater 370. Students and parents are very concerned about the future of the high school theater program, and we share those concerns. This year, the theater put on the musical Pippin, which students from other districts traveled here to see. The student directed one act, the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild play, which was written by the students, and the spring play Peter and the Starcatcher. So it will not be enough to just hire a new director. We need to find a person who has the energy and creativity that Courtney Bottomley brought to the program. The new director will also have to have the ability to connect with the students. We would encourage the listing to be opened up outside the district on School Spring, and I know that there are many parents and students who are very interested in being on an interview panel. Most school districts have a full-time teacher, ideally teaching theater-related classes such as acting or cinematography, who also direct the theater program, as Holliston once did. Perhaps it is time to reinstitute this position. At Rams, it is essential that the chorus teacher position be filled. Obviously, we would like to also see this be a 1.0 position. But the fact that despite many interviews, a qualified candidate has not been found speaks to the need for it to be more than a 0.5 position. Matt Grinna has done an amazing job at keeping the chorus program going at Rams, but it is an enormous undertaking for one person. We would also like to see the art and jazz night return to Rams, but with a single teacher for all music programs and a single teacher for all the art programs. Asking them to take on the organization of it seems like an impossible task. Hiring a chorus teacher and ideally a second art teacher would give them the ability to bring back showcase events such as Art and Jazz Night. And at the elementary school, we are thrilled that a chorus program has begun down there. Nick Rockwood has done an excellent job in his first year, and the students are so enthusiastic. However, we are disappointed to hear that both elementary art teachers have resigned after only 2 years in the district. They have done some amazing and creative work with the students, which was displayed at the high school during Art Saves Lives. And this is very concerning to us as parents and raises serious questions about the expectations and the schedule at the elementary level. And finally, we would like an update on the efforts to address the leaks in the high school roof over the auditorium and performing arts wing. I spoke before this committee in February regarding these leaks, and it's been reported that it continues to leak during heavy rains. Besides the air quality issues and potential damage to equipment, there are the obvious safety and accessibility issues a wet floor represents. Despite signage, a student could still slip and seriously injure themselves. And the garbage cans on the floor collecting the water falling from the ceiling creates a hazard for any student with accessibility issues, either a wheelchair or other assistance device. So thank you for your attention and for your support of fine and performing arts in the Holliston schools.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate all the information that you gave us. I can't really give you much feedback on most of it, but what I can say is that we'll be talking a little bit later about our updated ARPA request, which will include money to help fix the exterior wall at the high school and the leaks.
That would be great.
So that part.
Yes.
That's the question. So I know you offer theater classes at the high school, but this is not by Miss Bottomley.
No,
right? So it's
no,
a separate
she was simply
position.
a stipended position.
Right.
We do not currently have a theater teacher.
Like a daytime theater teacher. You
Right,
also don't
during the
currently
school
have.
day. Currently, there is no teacher. Those classes that are still being offered are being taught either by one of the music teachers or one of the art teachers, which takes them away from classes that they should be teaching in their own specialty.
Isn't that because we don't have that position?
Yep.
Or just because we weren't able to fill it with an appropriate teacher?
No, I don't know when that position was eliminated. I think when I arrived, it was a partial position, so with COVID, it was under-enrolled, and I believe that position was reduced at the building level because the principals bring forth these during the budget season.
Right.
If there's a specific need, that would come from the principal, and that would be vetted through the budget subcommittee.
Yeah, I wonder if we should look into that on the budget subcommittee. I wonder if there's data as far as, I don't know, you wouldn't know this, like kids that were opting to take those courses.
I think some of them were actually over-enrolled, from what I understand. And then I know this year, my youngest child just graduated. We were looking at the offerings, and things like cinematography were not being offered at all this past year because there was no one to teach them. So, and I know cinematography was a very popular option when it was being offered.
Yeah, I think we should definitely look into that. I'm not sure how a position just sort of slips away.
No, I know, yeah.
So,
Terry, thank you, and thank you for all of your work
Yes,
through the
thank you
many
very
years
much.
with HMAPA and your work this last year as president. So we really do appreciate everything they do for the arts here.
Thank you. And I won't be stepping away entirely, but stepping away for the administrative part. Mostly. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
So now it's time for school committee individual comment. We'll just go down with Sarah. Do you have anything? Okay, Minnie?
No, from
Amanda?
I already commented, but I should add, I apologize for being late, but I also just want to add that at that soccer game that I discussed before, there were 2 teachers there that had a lot of the students on the team. So just another shout out here at the end of the year. The teachers and the administrators are always so present in the community, and I just think it's wonderful. So, 5th grade.
Lisa?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Just briefly, last night over at Miller and Placentino, we had another Montessori multicultural night. Great dances. Love to see the kids in costume. Another great night. And also, Dan and I had attended graduation, and we're so thankful for the tradition that we have at Holliston, where students select a teacher they've had through the years, predominantly high school teachers, but sometimes we see teachers coming up from the other schools as well, who attend graduation and hand our students their diplomas. So, the weather wasn't perfect, but we made it through, and
It held up till
it held
the
off
end.
until the end. And so it was. Any other thoughts on graduation? It was,
No, it was great.
Yeah.
A lot of great performances by the students, and,
Yes.
vocal, musical. And it's just great to see everyone accept their diplomas. So for me, I don't really have anything. I did attend a portion of the Pops concert last, I think it was Friday night. Sean and Beth did a great job. Just sort of showcase everything our students can do and everything. A lot of what Terry was talking about. So it's definitely important to support that and to ensure that we continue with that. So next, we have not had any public comment, so I'm assuming no one is here for public comment. I don't see. Okay. So then we'll move on to presentations, and we have a presentation from the Holliston Education Foundation about some awards and that they gave out, and then we'll also vote on that to accept.
And Heidi, I will have to manually move those, so if you just let me know when to go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, what?
I have access to move the slides, so if you kind of just cue me, I'll move them along.
Thank you. All right, I'm Heidi Gibson, treasurer of the Holliston Education Foundation. This is Jess Brainerd, one of our board members. I want to thank you for the invitation to come present tonight what the Holliston Education Foundation does for the schools and what we represent. Our website is shown at the top of the slide, and we currently have 5 board members. We're always looking for more. On the next slide, we'll just summarize some of the programs that we grant in our support of the Holliston Public Schools. What we're most busy with throughout the year is teacher training opportunities, intensive study opportunities for educators,
classroom enhancement activities. We provide some equipment and training, but we really like to focus on the teachers through recognition programs and through training. Next slide. So I have just a short summary of our most recent activity, which was the award of our Spotlight on Education. These are awards that we give to various teachers and staff members who are nominated by their peers. That's the most important part. This year's winners include Nicole Bottomley at the high school, Angela Gavin at the Adams School, Brielle Chansey at Miller, and then the team of Sandy Hayes and Diane Brockert down at Placentino, and all the district nurses. This is a new one. We've never had such a large team, but the district nurses are involved in a lot of education as well as support, and they greatly deserve the Spotlight on Education Award this year. I'd like to take an opportunity to have us read a little bit of what some of these nominations were like for our winners. As you look at the pictures of the awards that were all done in the individual schools this year, instead of having one single reception, we went to faculty meetings where we went into the schools and we did the awards with the faculty and some family members who attended as well.
And so what's really special is that the teachers nominate each other. You know, they take time out of their busy schedules to write really beautiful, heartfelt letters that are really specific. So we're not going to read them all, but we pulled just a couple excerpts. So Diane Brockert and Sandy Hayes, the paraprofessionals at Placentino. Diane and Sandy have worked in the district as paraprofessionals for over 25 years. Flexibility is a paraprofessional's middle name, and Sandy and Diane have stepped into many new roles over the years and have become indispensable to the staff at Placentino. Throughout it all, they both are resilient, incredibly adapted to the change in schedules, and are truly dependable. Sandy and Diane were nominated by numerous staff members at Placentino. And then for Brielle Chansey, who's a counselor at Miller Elementary, Brielle goes above and beyond to support our students at Miller. She constantly goes outside of her responsibilities to ensure a safe and supportive environment for all students and staff members. As a school counselor, she not only provides social emotional support to our students, but will go the extra mile to make sure they are successful academically with their needs being met. We are lucky to have her at Miller Elementary, and I just second that. I have 2 kids at Miller, and she's amazing. Brielle was nominated by 5 colleagues for this award and richly deserves this recognition. Angela Gavin at Adams is a school counselor, and she is the purest, these are quotes from the teachers, purest example of what it means to care about others and their success. As a guidance counselor in 7th grade and the guidance team leader, she is constantly thinking outside of the box and helping anyone she can. She wears so many hats in our building, we would literally fall apart without her. If she were to have a superhero catchphrase, it would be, "I got it," as she is often heard saying. Angela's resilience, selflessness, and sense of purpose would see to it that no student was forgotten. Next, multiple teachers also recognized Principal Nicole Bottomley. Nicole works tirelessly to make Holliston High School a welcoming environment for all learners. Even as principal, she has an open-door policy for students and staff alike. She values student voice and invites our students' feedback in all avenues. As a leader, her staff and faculty feel heard, valued, and appreciated every day. Administrators, I'm going to go on. One of the other practices Nicole has implemented, and I think this is important to share as this is a transition year, is an annual course proposal week. Teachers are encouraged to create and propose new elective classes within their departments that spark passion for themselves and their students. Administrators, curriculum coordinators, school counselors, and students are part of the process, and innovation abounds. Most importantly, Nicole comes from a place of yes. Instead of creating roadblocks, she recognizes her staff's expertise, empowers them to make decisions in the best interest of students, and trusts her staff to do their jobs. Nicole is a benevolent leader and the best principal a school can have. And finally, our Holliston School District Nurses Awards. As health educators, our nurses have worked tirelessly through the past few years of COVID, caring for the students, families, and staff of our Holliston community by disseminating and teaching the ever-changing protocols, policies, and challenges associated with COVID. Today, they continue to support and advocate for our students in the aftermath of COVID, both physically and mentally, as we all try to return to normal. In recognition of their dedication, compassion, and enthusiasm for their service to Holliston students, families, and staff, especially during these difficult past 3 years, HEF was proud to present the Spotlight on Education Awards to our hardworking yet tireless nursing team, Missy Jordan, head nurse, Brenda Barton, Sarah Holmes, Catherine Harkin, Denise Butler, Amy Pizzelli, Teresa Rodriguez, and Katie Della Rocca.
Okay, and I would also like to mention, as treasurer, part of our recognition for the teachers is we like to give each winner a monetary award. This year, we were hoping for $100. I know now, due to the new policy that is new to me, that this has to be approved by the school committee. So I'd like to put that forward. I submitted a letter asking for approval of our traditional Spotlight on Education awards and gifts to the teachers. They are always encouraged as a part of the award to use the money for their classrooms, for their staff rooms, for their schools. Moving on, another thing that we're involved in throughout the year is our intensive study grants. These are grants that are given to teachers who propose innovative ideas, ways of injecting creativity into the classroom. And I'd like to show you some of the intensive study awards and grants that were given this year. Next shows what was awarded to the high school in the fall. We provided books to every freshman in the high school, taking a new science unit on well-being. And this book was Teaching the Compassionate Teen. This is a very timely request by some of the high school staff, as this freshmen were the class that had to endure the pandemic and enter the high school with all the anxiety of a new school. And we were pleased to be able to do this early in the year. Next, we have an award that we made to the Placentino counseling team. They need funding to train Rosie, the school comfort dog. Rosie has been in Placentino working with the children, but she's still in training. She's a therapy dog, and we were pleased to provide $1,000 towards the goal, which still hasn't been completely met.
So it was around 9,000 or something.
I think it was 5,000 needed.
Yeah,
so.
between 5 and 6, I think.
Yeah. She's been helping students cope and also helping with school rejection. Next, we provided some training for Montessori teachers. They had a wonderful opportunity to attend the American Montessori Society's conference in Boston. So we sent 3 teachers, and they brought back new inspiration and ideas. We have 144 elementary Montessori students. Next, we helped send a couple of high school teachers to design camp for educators. This was very interesting. They learned techniques to build collectivity for students as well as staff through projects like design thinking and innovative strategies. They immediately began sharing their knowledge widely as soon as they returned from design camp. Now, we still have at the end of the year a couple of more grants that we wish to award. Miller would like to create a Zen Den, which is an upgrade to the current chill zone that they have, as well as they would like to provide equipment for comfort corners in every single classroom in Miller. And HEF would like to be able to contribute to these efforts in the Miller School. Finally, a high school science teacher would like to attend the CDC Science Ambassador Training Workshop in July. These will include hands-on sessions, STEM lesson plans, and a lot of opportunity for new teaching ideas.
Is that epidemiology?
She currently teaches epidemiology at the high school and will benefit greatly from this experience. And finally, we have an entire community that supports the Holliston Education Foundation efforts, and we've listed them here. And we also hope that the school committee will support us as we continue to try to enrich the educational experience here in Holliston through teacher support, staff support, recognition, and specialized grants that we encourage to spread widely throughout the schools. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heidi.
We wanted to say how much we appreciate all of the HEF Spotlight winners, but also a special shout out to the nurses in all of our buildings for the work that they did through the pandemic, and then even now as we come out of it and deal with the needs of students.
I think we should give all the Spotlight winners a round of applause.
I think it was great that you were able to come in and do that, because I think it's very important that anytime we do recognize, teachers, staff, other professionals, that, we do make sure we do as much as possible to recognize them. The one question I have, are you looking for the vote for the upcoming grants now? Because if we don't do it now, it may not be until
If possible, that would be great.
Yeah, the upcoming grants.
Quite a while ago, so I know things have changed, so.
Just making sure, so I can, because I didn't, you've now, I guess, publicized them anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what the process will be for getting these approvals. You want a memo from us, and this includes the PTA and any other parent group that wants to do this sort of thing?
So I have your email in front of me, so I can simply use that to form the motion.
I think now that the policy was, well, it's going to be.
It's not official, but we'll
finalized
just do it now and just cover all of our bases, so that way.
And then we'll be able to put together and send out to people and let them know exactly how to do it.
Indeed, I'd like to recommend a process that all of the parent group officers are made aware of it and the procedure for doing it. Some of these are pretty short fuse and others have time.
Right, exactly. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the 13 Spotlight grants to the educators mentioned, educators and staff mentioned, in the amount of $100 each. In addition, for Rosie, the Comfort Dogs training for $1,000, the Montessori conference for $900, Design Camp for $1,600, and then to create a Zen Den for $2,000, which I guess is broken up in different amounts, right? And then provide $900 for the high school teacher to attend the training in Washington, D.C. In July, it's really hot in Washington, D.C. So
Montessori.
Yeah, we did the Montessori. Yep. That was all. I got them all, right?
Didn't get it all?
Yes, the nurses were lumped into it. Yep.
Yes, that's part of the 13, right? Yep.
Yes.
So I got them all.
I think so, yes.
Moved by Dawn.
Okay.
Second.
Oh,
Wait, she goes.
sorry, second by Amanda. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
So much.
All right, that was great. And year in review with a focus on curriculum and instruction.
But they need to access my They have to putting it in within the presentation.
Well, then you're going to have to, here.
It does.
Okay. No, but you can come up. Yeah, I'll set up.
Okay. Come up. So,
And it is confusing if you don't know.
I'm not going to know how to do this.
There's a really long order.
You'll make it.
Oh, over there?
Oh, it's unplugging power cord.
Okay.
Unplug the cord.
You're good.
Before you guys begin, I just want to commend you for how little red there is in this, and how much more white it is, so it makes it much easier to, I know I'm a printer, but at least I can make notes on it, and so anyway, thank you.
I
I am very excited to have the 3 district curriculum coordinators present to talk about all of the work that's been accomplished by themselves and the teachers this year, along with all of the changes that have been made to our website. So I'd like to welcome James Lavassier, who's in charge of STEM, Ida Pappas, Unified Arts, and Joe Hicks, Humanities.
All right, so we're going to start by going over some resources that are available for everyone here. This is DESE's website. For those who don't know, DESE stands for Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is their website where we can find their curriculum frameworks. Each subject area has its own set of standards that are going to be listed right here. So if I click on the link at the top, it's going to bring you to the DESE website. And you can see here all the current frameworks are listed, world language up top, all the way down. English, ELA right there. And I'm going to go into science because I'm most familiar with science. We work with these every single day. We're constantly going in and checking these, updating our curricular documents to reflect these. We go to the science.
My computer does is just click save and keep on going. I don't know. My computer makes me download it now, so just keep on downloading. That's fine.
So these, there we go. Usually it opens as an actual web page, but this opens as a PDF. So this is Science, Technology, and Engineering, referred to as STE standards from pre-K all the way through high school. So if you scroll down, they start off by introducing the vision here. So when they sat down to create these standards, they start with a vision. I'll get there eventually. Here's the vision, and then they go through some guiding principles for developing these standards. And it's frozen. So, and then after that, they have grade-based content, which is the content standards. And each grade has 4 or 5 bands that goes along with it. Whether it's life and in science, there's life science, there's physical science, there's earth science, and then there's engineering and technology. And so all the stuff that we do at all of our schools is directly driven through these state standards here. And again, they have them for all the subjects taught at all the school levels.
So one of the important things that we wanted to make sure was on the website was our DESE report card. And though probably everyone here knows what the DESE report card is, it is for people who are listening out there in town. The DESE report card basically is a way for us to identify things that we're doing really well and things that we are working on. And in these report cards, you can see, this is on our website, so that you can look at the data by district or by school. And if you just go in, you can see the demographics, you can compare things from year to year, you can look at how many students took tests, et cetera, et cetera. So we just wanted to make sure, in an effort to be fully transparent, that I have no idea what's happening, that we made sure that this was one of the resources that we had on our website, as it's a great tool for families.
I'm afraid to touch it. So also available on our website is a link to our district curriculum accommodation plan. This is what the district does across the board for all of our students. It is our, why didn't that open? There we go. So on our teaching and learning website, you scroll down, you'll find the links for all of these different things we've been talking about, including the district accommodation plan. Not be very happy with me. It's gonna work.
Why is this going to stand there?
Here we go.
Okay.
So these are the supports that we put in place for all of our students. It acts as both a resource for what teachers can do when they have a student that's struggling, and then there's a whole chart about what the supports that we can offer to our kids. It's important to note that we are aligning ourselves as best we can to the Massachusetts tiered system of supports, which identifies 3 different tiers of supports that we give to kids. Tier 1 being all the kids, Tier 2 being more focused, and Tier 3 being very, very small groups. But again, I think the most important thing here is this is about our general ed students and the things that we do for them in the classrooms to make sure that they get the stuff that they need to be successful. gonna just go with it.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
It happens.
There's a gremlin.
Also on the webpage is a link to the Center for Instructional Support. Again, it's a DESE. It's a DESE tool. It has a lot of really great information that parents and educators can go to. I think one of the most useful things to show you right now would be at the bottom. Well, it has links to the frameworks and links to some of the statewide initiatives for literacy. One of the places I've been spending some time lately is on their Curate website. This is curriculum ratings of curriculum products, and as we go through curriculum reviews, we are making sure that the state has reviewed all the different curriculum products and they have decided which ones do and do not align to state frameworks. So it's a great place for us to go to make that initial choice of which ones should we start looking at versus all the things in the world. It narrows down a list of the ones that we know align to what's expected of teachers and students in Massachusetts. And you get really good ratings about what does and does not meet expectations. And then you can go into those that do and find out what is the best choice for us here in Holliston, because that matters as well. So that's a really interesting thing to take a look at. We're gonna just go back here. Okay.
Why is this?
And lastly, also on that webpage, again, link to a DESE resource, the Family Framework Guide. It's for all the different grades. It's a quick, family-friendly snapshot of what happens in each grade in each of the core content areas. It's available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Simplified Chinese. It's a state web resource. It's really clear and helpful to know. My kids in 5th grade, what are the things that we should expect them to be doing in math and social studies? When they're in 7th grade, what does science look like for kids in the Commonwealth? So that we have an understanding of what is the norm for our kiddos in Massachusetts. So it's a great starting point.
So this is what one of those look like.
Thank you, Ida.
Yeah, sorry. Since it wasn't open.
No, it doesn't like me.
Sorry.
Alrighty. Back here.
Okay, at the beginning of this school year, one of the tasks that Joni and the three of us had was to select a district-wide format to articulate our curriculum. And we had to quickly decide, like, what did we want it to look like, what elements were important to be visible to the public. And the three of us settled on understanding by design for a variety of reasons. One reason is that a lot of our faculty have already been trained in understanding by design and have started some curricular documents using that format. And I'm just talking for myself, I really like the 2.0 version of Understanding by Design because specifically the transfer task that is required in it. I think that it directly aligns to our commitment to project-based learning. Transfer allows students to do something hands-on where they get to make decisions. There's higher order thinking involved. There's decision-making. There's collaboration. We can definitely tie in our project-based learning chops that we've been developing over the years into this Understanding by Design 2.0 version. Stage 1 is how we've been focusing this year. It has us articulate per unit our standards that James just sort of described where you can see them. That transfer task, deciding what students are going to be able to do with their knowledge in order to demonstrate mastery. We pick that first, and then we design everything going backwards, articulating the enduring understandings and the essential questions, just to make sure that we have the context of our unit, and then articulating the knowledge and skills that will be addressed. We had a goal of having all major courses completed and on the website by June. We're close. We're not quite there. We're very close, though. And whatever's not there is like almost ready, but not quite finished. Stage 1 is the only part of this template that is going to be shared with the public. It's really just an overview of the units. And for those units that are already up online, next year we'll start focusing on what Stage 2 means. Stage 2 basically of Understanding by Design is just focused on assessment. And it's basically sort of walking teachers through the process of deciding what constitutes mastery. If we can articulate what we want to see and to what degree, then it will be more likely to teach to it, right? So not just that sort of assessing, giving grades, it's really not what it's about. It's really about the daily check for learning. What do we expect students to be able to produce every single day, and how can we tell if they've met that or not? So stage 2 is really just assessments and articulating that, their checks for learning. But stage 3 really is just for teachers. Teachers keep that, and it's almost like a library for them to sort of track how things are developing. It's a place for us to articulate how lessons are unfolded. It also allows us a place to store Google Slides or video links or resources that we want to make sure we have at our fingertips and don't lose track of in our wide Google Drives that are bottomless pits. So it really allows us just to sort of keep everything nice and together. And that way, when we have new team members on board, we can share things more efficiently. And everything is there, from the overarching to the assessments to the daily plan. And then also how we differentiate for all different kinds of students. And that we have a repository of the different ways that we've differentiated, and they're all in one place. We don't have to recreate the wheel. So this is what a unit plan, not just stage 1, but all 3 stages of understanding by design looks like. We created this document as just sort of a user's guide for teachers in case they forget. I mean, we do trainings, etc., but then it's months later and we're going, oh yeah, how do we do that? So I just wanted to sort of walk through what it looks like, if it will stop sort of flashing for you. Sorry about that. I'll be gentle over here. So obviously this is, we're going to give the overview of like the title and the summary of what the unit is about and the timing of it, but also identifying the learning standards, articulating what tasks students are going to do in order to demonstrate their knowledge, and then here are our enduring understandings and essential questions, etc. And then as we come down here to the stage 2, we just give them just little cues to remind them, like, oh yeah, this is what this means. Like, what is other evidence? Oh, I should put my rubric here. And here's the learning plan. You might want to put your Google Slides here. You might want to put your textbook titles here. And then sort of examples of things they could include in their lesson plans. All right, sorry. If you're getting dizzy looking at that.
Yeah, actually, could we, if no one objects, I know we have this and we can look at it on our screens, could we maybe turn that off?
Absolutely.
I think I'm super sensitive to that, the flashing.
Yeah, it's distracting.
I'm really
for us
sorry.
too. We're all trying not to look at it.
I think that the jack is not going in properly into the computers every single
Maybe,
time.
because it was okay over here, so I don't know if it's the internet or the computer.
No, I think it's the computer. The jack is not going in well.
Apologies to people at home, but I don't think they were able to look at that anyway. And we have it to look at.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the jack. Something is wrong with the jack.
Which number slide are we on now?
Want me to try?
Number 8? 9. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
So I'm going to quickly walk through the.
Let's hope. Let's try this, but it might be still a problem. We'll see.
We'll tell you where to go.
All right, next slide.
I think it's the jack with that computer. Yeah. It's not setting in properly in the slot. Like my computer.
So the district website, I'm going to go over a little bit about teaching and learning part of the district website. So far, like I just said, we've put up a bunch of curriculum maps. I'm going to walk you through one of those, and they're each going to walk you through one of theirs as well. You go on to the district website. So if you click on the link over there on the right, you go back to slides. Sorry, you go back to right there, and then you click on standards by month up in the top right. Either of those, it's all the same link. And then if you go to academic, and then teaching and learning. And then this is where we put all of our documents, everything. I think Ida kind of brought this up. You go down to the bottom of the left side where it says curriculum maps, standards by unit. The major focus of our work this year was getting all this stuff uploaded. And like Ida said, we're almost done. A couple of stuff's not there. If you click on something that's not there, it'll just say coming soon. But if we go to grade 5, and click on science, and And you can see these are the units in science on the left side. The time periods they're taught are in gray there. So the first unit, the Web of Life, starts in September and goes through November. If you click on the standards in the gray box, it's going to give you the standards that are assessed during that unit. So if a parent wants to know what their kids are learning in any subject during any time, they can click on that and they'll see the standards. If you go back to that webpage you're just at,
That's so good.
and you click on the Unit 1, Web of Life, you're going to see that Stage 1 document is going to come up. It's a science class, 5th grade science. There's a unit summary there. Those are the same standards that were listed before. There's some transfer tasks associated with this first unit. And if we scroll down, you can see the enduring understandings, essential questions, the factual knowledge they're learning, and the skills they're acquiring during that unit. That's all part of the Stage 1 stuff that we're posting for all of our classes. That's just for one science class, but we are getting it up for all the classes eventually. All the major classes by the end of the year is our goal, and then starting electives going into next year.
And I just can add like the tremendous amount of work that all of you have done supporting the teachers so that they could get this work done with you so that you can make this live and living and breathing and keep adding to it.
I would like to thank all the teachers because I could not do all of them. They did the work. I was there harassing them constantly, but they definitely did the work. I was just there to kind of put it up on the site and make sure it's organized. They were doing all the actual groundwork.
Great job done by all.
Yes.
So if you go back to the slideshow, we tried to just sort of test drive a couple different curricula so that you could sort of see what it looks like in different formats. If you go to the next slide, sorry, one more. There we go. If you click on the high school Art 1 honors, I just wanted to show what it would look like. You're going to have to go down to Unified Arts. And there it is, Art 1 honors. So I wanted to just show you what it would look like to have a semester course. So you can see the timing at the top is in 2 semesters. And so, you know, you would look at what semester your child is in order to be able to line up what unit they should be on. Again, James described the standards are literally just the standards addressed in that unit. You can click one if you want. Or you can just click one of the units. So this is our first unit. Again, this is our Stage 1 document. And I try to be very clear about which standards. We have proficiency standards in world language and also in performing arts. And visual arts, just to be clear that you know which standards we're talking about, because they aren't all the same. They become more difficult as you stay in band, for example, or in art. And then there's the transfer tasks, enduring understandings, etc.
And we go back to the slideshow one more time and click on the 7th grade ELA. This is a unit that students engage with Ms. Schmidt, Ms. Malloy, and Ms. Almeida. We're going to go down to Pixar Shorts, Unit 3. They did this in March around the time of MCAS. They looked at the common formula of Pixar short films and the fairy tale nature of them, and then they wrote their own fairy tales and shared them. It was a great way to take the learning that they did and then apply it and do their own creative process. So again, their enduring understandings, essential questions are there, and the skills and the knowledge that they acquired at the bottom as well. But it was a really great way for them to. What's awesome about ELA is that it's both learning how to analyze literature, and there's so many great ways other than writing a paper to then do something with that. This is a great way to show that they understood the nature of what a fairy tale is and the common structures that happen and how you create imagery, and then have that creative license to do it for themselves. And they're great. And then they get to share them with each other. So, thank you. We can go on to the next slide. So one of the major things we started this year was doing a systematic approach to reviewing all of our curriculum. Last year during our tiered focus monitoring, the state suggested that we get back to doing this. We had been, and then COVID, so we're recommitting ourselves as a district to doing these reviews. It's an opportunity for us to take a step back and look at an entire program at once and recommend changes that we would like to make system-wide. This year we did we started a full-scale math curriculum review from pre-K all the way up to high school. Teachers from all the buildings, and administrators from all the buildings were involved in that. It's extensive, takes a lot of time to do that. In particular, because it involves teachers at the elementary level, that makes it difficult to do an ELA curriculum review because it's the same teachers teaching the same, they're doing all the teaching of all the subjects. So this year we only focused on a secondary ELA review, and we'll be starting the primary one coming this fall. As the math one winds down, we can then invest some of that time into the ELA. As well as next year we'll be starting science, social studies, and world language. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure that our curriculum is doing the things it should be doing the very best it can for our kids based on the most current standards. A lot of the frameworks have changed since the last curriculum reviews were done. So there's just, we have to do that check to make sure we're still doing the things we're supposed to do.
We're hoping the math curriculum review winds up at the end of the calendar year is our hope, but we'll see kind of where it takes us. We're make sure we make the right decision and get all the information. My goal will be to end it so that we can, if we're applying, getting any new curricular resources, we can put them in the budget for next school year, the following school year, so 24.
And for ELA, we should be done with the ELA, the secondary portion, around the middle of the next year too. That's the goal, to be done with that. And make some recommendations. They won't have as much of a budgetary impact, but perhaps a program studies impact for the high school that we want to bring before scheduling happens.
And we have identified some curricular resources in elementary and in the secondary schools that we'd like to pilot already, so that's our kind of next step.
Great. Oops, did I hit one too many things?
No, I hit it early, so I
Oh,
can see what was
sorry.
coming.
We're going to this one. Newsletters.
So one of the things that we wanted to do this year was make sure we published newsletters as we were going in and out of the schools, gathering photos and quotes and student work, et cetera, in order to share with parents and the community, in order to meet our strategic plan, Arch 1 communication practice. So as you can see, I'm assuming you've all received it. I think everybody in all of Holliston has seen it at some point. But what we're really proud of is the number of views that people are opening it, and I get a lot of questions and kudos for things that people are seeing. So we just wanted to make sure that we also highlight the fact that there's another one coming. We're in the midst of putting that together right now.
Do you want to open it one or?
Sure. Whatever one you want to. So what we did try to do in the format is to make sure that we highlight each area and each school. So library gets a big shout out because they had an author, lots of pictures, lots of kids doing things. These are our transfer tasks, hopefully. Look at that. Who doesn't want to make a taco? But what we do like is that we kind of switched it up. I think world language was at the very end at 1 month, and then we popped it up into the top. So trying to sort of make sure that they're long because we have a lot of things happening, but making sure that every group sort of hits the top of the list. Otherwise, you have to click the 3 buttons at the bottom to see everything.
You good?
So now I think we're just going to talk a little bit about the summer work that we have going on this coming summer. I'll start with the STEM work. As I mentioned, we're still in the middle of a math curriculum review, so we're going to meet the end of June, 3 hours. There's, I think, 14 or 15 teachers that have all already agreed to come in the end of June and have one final meeting at the end of the year, iron out our vision and a couple other things, find out exactly what we're going to pilot, kind of get started on those pilots, and then pick up in August before school starts so we can really hit the ground running in September when school starts. We're also starting a science curriculum review. There's going to be 3 hours in August for 14 people, so I'll be running math curriculum in June, then math in August, the end of August, and then science also in the end of August. There's some new science courses that are running this year. There's 15 hours per course designated for using UBD to create those stage 1 documents and to develop the courses. The elementary science curriculum development, there's currently 2 teachers, 24 hours each to develop science curriculum for 3rd and 4th grade. Third and fourth grade science is now going to be taught in the classroom instead of unified arts, which I'm sure you're all aware of. But they need to develop the curriculum because it's currently only once a week, and now they're doing it 5 days on, 5 days off. So it's going to be a lot deeper, richer curriculum. And I've already met with those teachers 2 or 3 times, half-day release days, and we've really made a lot of progress already. But we want to make sure that when school starts, they have the content pretty much mapped out. Create stage 1 TV documentation for math and science and math electives. There's tons of electives in math and science at the high school that we weren't able to really touch this year because we focused on those major courses. But we'd like that website to have every course that the school offers, and the parents can click on any course and see what those documents or what the students are learning. Creation of a math placement test for 7th grade into either 8th grade math or algebra. So there's going to be some science teachers, 2 or 3, actually 3 that have volunteered to, or that have offered to create a placement test so that we have another data set for to look at when we're placing kids into either Math 8 or Algebra in 8th grade. RAM's developing lessons around transfer tasks, 14 hours. A couple of teachers have applied for that. So using their current curriculum and the transfer tasks they identified this year and modifying their curriculum that they're teaching to reflect those transfer tasks. And then RAM's computer science, Nicole Perkins is going to finish up some stage 1 documentation because he's got 3 different courses and he's one person. So he's going to finish up some of that stage 1 documentation and curriculum work in his computer science course.
In the humanities, we're mostly focused on ELA this summer. A lot of the work here is inspired or driven by the curriculum review that we're doing, some early recommendations and things that we discovered that we want to tackle as soon as possible. So in the middle school, each of the teams is going to be doing some work right after the end of the school year, so next Thursday and Friday, then the following Wednesday and Thursday. In the 6th and 7th grade, they're going to be developing some literature circle units so that the kids have more choice in the books that they're reading around common theme. The 6th grade got a grant this year to buy some books for theirs, and they learned a lot in doing that the first time, and they want to make some changes to that format and make it stronger. And I love literature circles. It gives students an opportunity to really own their learning. They set their pacing, they talk with each other, they get to choose, with some limitations, the book that they're reading, and it's great. The 8th grade is going to do some work on their first unit of the year, which is focused on the house on Mango Street and writing vignettes. And in the high school, one of the things we discovered is that we want to update and add some new text into the current text lists. That takes a lot of time because you have to read and vet find the right book is really hard to choose like the perfect book to use when you only get to choose like 4 or 5 of them for a course. Like when you make that choice, you want to make sure it's the absolute best one. So pairs of teachers and myself are going to be reading, we narrowed it down to 4 potential books everyone's going to read. Each of the teachers is going to read all 4 of them and write a quick recommendation on whether or not it could be the right choice, and then we'll come to a conclusion as to which one might be the best to add in. I'm really excited by the text that they chose, and we narrowed down the list to look at. They're much more contemporary and much more diverse. They're bringing in some different perspectives. For instance, in the 9th grade, we noticed that there wasn't, we could have a stronger book that has a stronger female protagonist. So all the books that we're looking at are focused on making sure that that is something that's part of it. In 11th grade, we're really trying to think about, like, when we talk about world literature, are we really thinking about all the different parts of the world in world literature and making it as strong as possible? We're looking at 9th grade essay writing. We're revising the course to modernize the writing task that students are engaging with to make sure that the things that they're learning to write are the things that are going to be useful for them to learn how to write. We're going to be looking at what the diagnostic is at the beginning of the course and revising that. And then we started the planning, thinking about the 3 different types of writing that we want kids to work through, and we're going to pilot some of those assignments this coming year, thinking about academic writing, professional writing, and personal writing. I think what would be great that those pilots is that will then could be a potential change that we might think about, like changing the course title or what the program of studies says based on some of these assignments that we pilot. And then lastly, 2 new courses are being taught in the high school. So each of those teachers is working 2 days each to do the UBD stage 1 documents to have those cataloged for us.
Can you tell us what the courses are?
Yes, one of them is hauntings, legends, and folklore. Maybe not in that order, Mr. Strum is developing that. It's going to be great. And then the other one is Fashion Through the Ages. Miss Frost and one of her students that participated in the Global Citizens Project this year. Her capstone was to design a course. So she's going to be interning with Miss Frost and participating both in the course with her, and they're going to do that together. But that course is really great. It looks at traditional and contemporary dress, how we challenge that with what the gender norms and stereotypes are, and how we then push those boundaries. Looking at what ceremonial dress plays, the impact of fast fashion on the environment, good that makes it accessible to people so we can all look good, bad that we are using materials and using processes that hurt our environment, right? So what's that tension there? It's going to be great. And those are both one-term courses.
I want to take both those classes.
They're going to be fun.
The summer work in the Unified Arts is mostly in the elementary. What I've discovered is that these amazing superheroes are trying to write 6 different curricula all at once, and it's just overwhelming. So in order to relieve some of that tension, just setting aside time where I can work also right beside them on developing some of the UBD elements. So the 2 music teachers for the elementary and I will work together to create transfer tasks, maybe compose some music, arrange, etc., in order to sort of populate some of these documents a little quicker. The elementary Spanish team has done an amazing job. They're almost complete with 6 years of Spanish, which is, we've never seen 6 years of Spanish curriculum here, ever. So they really have worked hard. They're so close, but they have about 2 more days until they're completely done. So we're going to be doing that next week on Thursday and Friday. And because we've added elementary health into 3rd and 4th grade, we have to expand and adapt some of our 5th grade health lessons and sort of make sure everything is sort of spiraling and unfolding appropriately. So we have 2 teachers and myself working 5 days in the middle of July in order to create just 3 of those units, because we aren't going to roll out that those courses until January. So it will give us a little time to maybe create the other 2 or 3 in the first part of the school year.
And after all this, we are excited to also offer to every building an additional 30 hours per building in increments of no more than 10 hours for a teacher to propose their own work that's tied to the strategic plan, arches, and our initiatives. And so the principals will be looking at those and approving those. It just can't be something that duplicates the work that they're already doing this summer. So that is it for our presentation. Thank you very much. Do you guys have any questions for us?
So I guess that summer work that you're talking about, the additional 30 hours per building and all of this, how does that compare to normal sort of summer work in the past?
I was not here, so I'm sorry, but last year we were not able to, we did not offer it, but I have a budgetary line. I'm not sure, well, James, would you know? Do you know in the past, was it?
We did
I'm
have
not
some
sure.
in high school. I don't know. I wasn't privy to how many in the district, but in high school there were always hours offered for science.
Right. I mean, pre-COVID, they would send something out every summer and say, what are the topics that you're interested in? And then depending on the money that was available, they would determine which topics they could use. So I can't really tell you, because I wasn't here then, exactly what the amount of hours.
Maybe Keith has that, and we can look at the history of that. So bring that up with him.
Thank you. This is awesome. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this and the website and all this stuff. It's really exciting how visible it is in the community. So thank you. I just had a question about the Understanding by Design unit plan template. As a teacher, that scares me a little bit because it looks like a lot of work for the teachers to have to document every unit plan. I mean, I imagine myself having to do this and I'm Googling the standards and writing the number of the standard and stuff, and it feels a little bit busy-worky as far as having to present my own lesson plan. And I just wanted to know what your feedback is from the teachers as far as how much of this is going to be a time suck for them to have to, when they're planning lessons in units, and how much of it is going to be placed on the teachers and how much of it is going to be placed on you guys? It sounds like you three are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but I just wanted to know if you could talk a
For
little
a
bit
lot of
about
the
that.
schools, a lot of the work has been done. It's just in different formats and kind of all over the place. So I think, at least for me, I'm getting those old documents and using teachers as resources with those documents to check and be like, is this still what you do? Is this still how you do it? And then copying and pasting and having them look over and confirm. So we're working with them, but we're trying to take work that's already been done and just move it into a different format. I envision when they're working on stage 3, which you're saying lesson plans, I'm envisioning lots of links that are to stuff they're doing, and so maybe a link to their drive where you can go in and see what's happening, so they can be changing it and modifying it normally and not doing that work that you're saying busy work, going in and actually modifying that individual
It's
document.
hard to have everything digital.
Yes, it is.
So if teachers don't already have that, I just wanted to know how, like what kind of time they're going to get to have to put up that all.
I think as we go through thinking about how we do stage 2 and stage 3, like being really cognizant of like what that means, like that's a thing, something we have to think about as we go forward. I think what's been helpful with stage 1 is that, especially for the high school and the work that they had previously done at Rams, it was in different forms, and even if it might not have been articulated in the same way, a meeting with a teacher to figure out like what it is they're doing now, and then like our expertise in using this form or using this template was helpful, so that they could tell me what the enduring understandings are and the essential questions, and I can hear about what the unit is, and I know the standards well enough to go be able to pick out the right ones and help them put it in there. So it's a lot of collaborative work that I can do like alongside them if their brain doesn't necessarily work in planning this. One of the things that we do need to do for our for accreditation and for DESE is that we have to have things in a unified way. It's like they have to be presented and standardized. So this is one way that is pretty common across places that we thought would be best. Not every teacher knows how to do these things or is an expert in it, and that's okay. That's the support then that we bring to them. Going forward, in time to be able to do stage 2 and stage 3, I guess we're gonna we have to be thoughtful about doing that so that there's time to do it well, and it doesn't feel like a futile, wasteful use of time.
It looks like the level of detail that you're asking as a parent, I'm like, wow, that's really cool to see. But as a teacher, the level of detail that you're asking, like, I'll be very honest.
It's really scary
I
to
do
see.
not think about which Massachusetts state math standard I'm teaching with every single lesson, nor do I have the time to look at that. And I just want to make sure that it's not like a busy work type of thing. You know?
And once it's done once we've done all that hard work, it's going back and updating it. It's not and revising. It's not recreating. So it does get better, I think.
And I think a lot of that work that you're saying is busy work, or copying and pasting standards and stuff, a lot of that's already done. Going forward, the teacher's lesson plan is more on what they're doing daily, right? So that's the stuff.
I don't think they write that down, is what I'm saying.
Like, just having been a director of curriculum, I love this because when I worked with teachers and we were developing all this many years ago in that role, once it's in there, then it's never done because we're always changing as we adapt to students, but the bulk of the work is done, and then year to year it makes your life so much easier. So I mean, I look at this as really being able to support the teachers and make less work in the long run, and initially the work is heavier. But I don't think you're requiring, there's no requirement of like how many lessons people putting in. It's really what they need to do their job, and they're going to have the input as to what they want to put in there, right?
And that's never going to be public.
Correct.
It's not going to be shared. That's more of an internal document that teachers can use to collaborate with each other.
But it's still more broad, right? Like if I get a new book from the library that I decide I want to read to my second graders, I don't need to write a whole lesson plan on what they're going to get out of that, right?
No, we want to make sure teachers can still be flexible.
Right.
We don't want to limit teachers at all.
And we meet with curriculum in groups every month, so that's where we would, be abreast of things that are changing, and we would be responsible for updating the website. Teachers would never need to do that. But also just setting up the documents. I know the three of us have created documents, templates, everything is already ready to go and shared amongst teams. And I know for, at least in my areas, I tried to format and copy and paste all the standards, and all they had to do was remove them. And it was actually a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, not that one. and just sort of pull them out, and then to just have the headings already done. And sometimes, just put in what you can, and I can fill in the rest. Like, oftentimes they'll be like, I don't really have a good grasp of essential questions, and I'm like, all right, that's something I can do. Now that you have your summary and your task, I can go in and take care of your essential questions easily, and then we would review them together. So they're definitely not expected to just busy work it to death, but one thing that we are noticing, though, is when we have new teachers, it's so much easier to bring them up to speed when things are articulated, even in a broad way. They're not in lockstep teaching those lessons, but we know what the goals are. And so this is probably the most important work we can do.
It's also really important for vertical alignment, right? So we know it's being taught when at each level, so we can see the big picture of how the child progresses from pre-K all the way up through 12.
And I would say, like, replacing a book, right? So, like, right now, if you looked at the 9th grade ELA, you'll see that the unit plan for Dear Martin and The Hate You Give, it's the same essential questions and the same enduring understandings and the same skills, because the books are so similar. So if I was going to choose another book, I might choose one that fits that mold, like maybe a slightly different text that still addresses those same things, and that would be easy to add in, so it wouldn't be overwhelming. And there might come a time we know this unit itself is no longer the thing that we really want to do. It's no longer the right thing for our students, and we're going to do a whole new book, and then we take the time, what's that book? What are the enduring understandings that I'm going to write? We go back, then we have to go back to the beginning and make those choices, but this gives us a way to think about what are the choices we have to make, what are the things that we're going to do with this, and make sure that we end up with something that's really good for our kids. At the beginning, it is a lot. I mean, for the high school for ELA, there's 20-something units that were created, using all the different things, and that's a lot of work. They had a lot of it done from previous work that they had completed with Atlas.
There's a lot of stuff in Atlas Rubicon that was done in like 2014. Yeah.
So a lot of this, it meets a lot of different arches and initiatives in our strategic plan, what they're working on with us. One of it is on Arch 1 under communication and being transparent with families of what's going on. It's also in Arch 3 doing really tapping into the vertical and horizontal alignment and looking at that. And they're doing critical work on this. Not only has this strategic plan, decided on the importance of that, the 23 people, you were part of that, right? But it's also DESE from our tiered focus monitoring, is dictating that we need to look at this too. And it's important, everybody needs to be able to see, we need to look at that global picture of how we're having, like James said, how a child progresses through and make sure, we as in Holliston are meeting all of those standards.
And oftentimes you can see when you're going through the last standard they teach, maybe they don't make it through. And if it's the same standard in 3 grades in a row, they're not getting to that geometry at the end or whatever it is at the end, they're not getting to multiple, and then they have a huge gap there. So maybe how can we rearrange those units or those topics so we can cover that a little bit earlier?
Some of it's taking things off their plate because they're duplicating, right? So to try to really fine tune and make sure, I mean, that's why I love this when you start to align it, you start to see that you might be trying to put too much in one year as well.
Or in Spanish, we're teaching the same idea around transportation multiple years, and they don't know because we have no documents to compare. And if you're not in the same school, you might not ever be able to see that. So.
And I will say, some teachers might find it tedious and futile and annoying. We love it. My brain works in this way, so it's stuff that I enjoy doing this type of work too. So.
I just would ask that you be mindful of the level of detail you're asking, and it sounds like you're very mindful of that and how you chose the template and everything, but it's not really realistic to ask as a teacher, when they're thinking about what they're going to do the next day, to write down 4 essential questions, language objectives, this kind of thing, and all those things you would do in a detailed lesson plan for a grad class. That's not realistic to do.
And this is just an overview of units.
Yeah, right. That's a unit.
Lessons or maybe more in a unit, so it's not at that level.
Down to that level of detail.
No, the lesson plan, we don't have a specific lesson plan template, so there really hasn't been an expectation of what you put into your actual lesson plans. This is really the big units about this is what you're covering in this whole time frame,
right?
And how you cover it and when you cover it is you're trying to fit it into that timeline,
right?
But no one's going to saying, okay, I'm checking on day 1 and doing this. It's really this is what you want to cover here.
Broader.
And then if you don't cover it, you can go over a little bit. I mean, that's the flexibility you have the teacher, and they're not getting into the detail. Each lesson would not ask.
You're not
for
going to
this.
ask for that kind of document.
No, that's the unit.
Unless it might be
So-
chapter 4, like it might be like something like that.
Can you go back to, can you just go back to any one of the examples? I just want to make sure of the, just go to any, no, go back, just pull up one of those. Yes. And I just wanted to make sure.
Scroll down to 5th grade.
Yeah, just scroll down to.
Math and standard unit.
Sorry, okay, just pick grade 5.
5th grade.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah.
You can do math or science.
So I just wanted, I'm not sure. So you can see, if you go down to science.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. So see what.
Yeah, it's overlapping.
But it's the whole document. So Amanda, if you look at like Unit 1, that's from September through mid-November. So that document that they showed you, that's for that time period.
Right, but this isn't just stage 1 of 3.
This is stage 1 of 3, correct? Yep.
So are 2 and 3 more details of this, and to the point where it will be like to that
No,
level of
there's
detail
gonna-
where teachers are asked to submit daily lesson
Well,
plans?
it's stage-
No.
Stage 3 says describe how the lesson unfolds.
Right.
Right.
So is that
we're
not
not
the
even
lesson?
at that place. Right now, we're still doing stage 1. It's a document to keep everything so that it's shared amongst teams, but there's no expectation to, it's literally just a warehouse to leave their Google Forms or their Google Classroom or their links and
Maybe
stuff
we'll
like
link a
that.
Google folder there for that unit, and the teachers that are coming on can click on that Google folder, open it up, and see what's in that Google folder. That's all it's really meant to be. It's not meant to be a strict.
Timeline.
Right.
I might have like a quick outline of like in the first 3 lessons I'm going to do this, and the next 2 lessons I'm going to do that. Like so, I'm planning out what's going to happen, but it's not going to be like every single lesson with every single objective.
And we're not checking teachers.
And
out,
we're
right?
not checking it. It's a place for them to work.
So it's more like a shared drive where
Yes,
folks can
that's
share
right.
resources?
Yeah. Yeah. And no one sees it but the team that's working on it.
Yeah.
And it's important that we clarify all this because when teachers have to do it, we have to make sure that it's useful too, right?
Right.
And it's still a year away from when we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're so regularly meeting with teachers that you're constantly, I'm sure you're asking them, like, what would be helpful to you? Would it be to have a Google Drive? Would it be to have templates? Would it be to have standards? I'm sure you're getting a lot of input.
Yeah.
And that's why we felt this was the model to move to, because they're able to be in every building because they're not tied to a schedule. That was the structure before. While people were doing great work, they couldn't get, if you were a high school teacher, your schedule doesn't allow you the flexibility to go down and work and help align that way. And they have the flexibility to be in each building every week.
It's amazing the amount of work these 3 have been able to accomplish. They've done an incredible job, alongside the teachers. I mean, this is a lot of work in 1 year. That's amazing. That is transparent for the community. It's also helpful to the teachers below a teacher and above a teacher, because you want to see what's going, what the children you're getting learn. And also it helps you if you have the students are struggling or students who need their curriculum adapted and differentiated for them. It's very helpful for teachers to be able to have that flexibility to look. This is multiple other districts I was in. This was very common, and it was also published stage 1 for the community. So it's not unheard of to do this.
Is it common?
Very common.
Yes.
I mean, you said it's not unheard of, but how like,
Oh, it's very-
what percentage of districts have this sort of level of
This is almost the same as Hopkinton has.
Same as Medway has.
But
Right.
Hopkinton has almost exactly the same.
Canton, Lexington, all the districts.
But we are
in and out.
dictated by DESE to have a shared common template of how we are expressing our curriculum.
But when they came in last year, they looked for this information,
Correct.
and we didn't have, we had all these different formats, but no place that was housing it all together.
Okay, so this is year 1 of 3? We hope.
It's a guesstimate. That's their hope.
That's 3 years. And what percentage of your time would you say you're working on sort of basically putting things into documents versus sort of doing, I guess, sort of reviews, you're working obviously on a math review right now. Some of the sort of what I'd consider to be, I think, more stuff that is really going to impact the kids the most immediately.
So I think that in doing those forums, it opens us up to be with the teachers and have those conversations about the curriculum and help them work on curriculum, because those forums are kind of the backbone of that and an entryway into that discussion. So we can go into a meeting and be talking about the forum and talking about what they're doing in class, and it's really all in one, right? So I think that that's a huge benefit to having those forums and using those forums. As far as how often, I think what you're getting at is how often do we sit and kind of copy and paste and put stuff in there. I mean, some days we do spend time doing it.
Oh, for sure.
But
I would say that it's been a vehicle for me to have a lot of really useful conversations with teachers in small groups. So every single day I schedule meeting time in schools, specific schools, with small groups, and we talk about things that I've worked on, and then we review it, and then I go and I squirrel away and maybe cut and paste or whatever and set us up for our next meeting. So it's not all the time, but it's just a way to sort of also just be really functional and efficient.
And I think as we do one of the curriculum reviews, it's helpful to have something like this to then easily review. Like, it's hard to then look at all the things we're doing. If I'm going to do a social studies review next year, it's helpful to have it articulated in a similar way from the beginning all the way to the end, so that we can then easily identify and be able to describe what it is that we're doing, and then find any gaps or holes or ways to be better at it. So it is useful. The amount of time, I mean, it ebbs and flows. Today I spent time doing, maybe a part of my time was spent doing these things because I have a couple more that are almost ready to get up there, and then part of my time was preparing for summer work, and part of my time was writing a status update for the ELA curriculum review. So it goes it's just.
And I spent most of my day today working with the 3rd and 4th graders planning curriculum, using these documents as kind of a backbone to plan the curriculum that they're going to be teaching in science next year.
And stage 1 goes directly to how the students are impacted. That transfer that is a part of stage 1 is how the students are demonstrating their knowledge, right? So it's what they're doing. So it goes directly to how effective we are in Holliston. And so it's talking about exactly what they're experiencing, the students are, and vehicles. And it's very, we're doing project-based learning, we're doing student choice activities, we're doing innovative learning, performance assessments. There's such a wide variety that we are not, as a district, saying it has to be done one way or another. That's up to the teachers of how they want to assess the students' knowledge. So it's really nice because you're not limiting the teachers. They're actually working with them to kind of brainstorm ideas and work off each other.
Well, I guess more important than some of that even though is how many hours are teachers spending doing this versus sort of what they did. I mean, if I'm a teacher with 10, 15 years of experience, I've been teaching my course. I know what I'm teaching. I'm checking the standards. I'm making sure that I'm hitting all the state requirements. How does this benefit me?
Well, you'll know what students are arriving with, and you'll know what they're leaving with. I think that's really important that we have a sense of how we fit into the spiral of learning throughout each of our disciplines. I think it also, I believe that the conversations that I've had in order to create some of these documents has made our practice even better, because we're collaborating with our team members whom we maybe have never actually sat down and talked to this degree about what we do. I think it's been really, I mean, of course I'm a nerd about this stuff, but I think it's been really eye-opening. I have seen really transformations and excitement, like, oh, how did you do that? Really starting to share resources and ideas. And I've been able to take things that are happening in kindergarten and bring it up to the middle school. And as an example of what a transfer task, sometimes it can be overwhelming. Well, what do you mean by that? And I'll be able to use an example from one group to another. I actually think it's revolutionary in our teaching to be able to spend time to talk about it to that degree, and everybody's on the same page. It's really powerful.
Can I just add, because I was the director of curriculum in 2010 to 2013, I think it was, and this is all the work I did when the Common Core came out with my pre-K to 8 teachers and high school teachers. I too was a nerd about this and enjoyed doing that work with them. But without doing it, it's hard to tell that you have covered all the standards, because when you start to do lessons, you're not checking off, but when you have it here, you're like, oh, I don't think I touched on that one. And this is sort of like that roadmap to go back and look at that. So this is, to me, makes my life as an educator easier, so that I know that I have covered it. And if I didn't cover it, well, I shift it around and try to get it into it. We're not saying prescribing when or how. It's to make it accessible and meaningful.
That's great. And then I'm just going to echo, and then I'll shut up. Like, as a parent, like, this is enough detail for me. Like, stage 1 is enough detail for me. Like, I don't need to see what my kids are doing in class every single day and what standard they're having. I'd rather have my children's teachers working on, like, calling me, or like, conflict resolution amongst their students, or like doing their own planning that they understand, like, instead of making it visible to me, the parent.
That's all that you're going to get, right? That's all.
Right, that's all you're going to see, yes.
But
And I, as a school committee member, also don't need to see any more detail.
I think I personally love the fact that, my boys are not in school anymore, but I wish I had like an access to something like this, because I always felt in dark about what the boys were doing in school. And having not been in the system of public school in the United States, it's very difficult for parents like me to understand what's going on with their kids, because the teaching styles are extremely polar opposites. Like, there's absolutely nothing that's common between how we grew up or how the standards are taught outside of the United States in many countries, and how things are done here. So I think something like this is very powerful, I'm sure, to all parents, but especially to parents like me.
I just want to add, too, one of the things that you all hear politically that we're up against is people spouting off misinformation is everywhere, and we get accused of things that we're not doing all the time. So to just say, point them here, okay, we're not doing that, this is what we're, these are the standards that we're being covered. And then if they have more questions, it's there, and then they can ask about it. And a big part of what we're hoping our curriculum coordinators can start with next year, we wrote into the job descriptions, we agreed with our HFT leadership when we wrote those job descriptions, that a big part of what we're hoping to have them do is to help support and coach teachers as well, especially new teachers entering the district once this work is done. And next year, part of their work will be going and do observations like our current high school department leaders do. They'll be able to do some of that at the middle and elementary school, and I just think that's going to be a phenomenal support, because they have the flexibility to go in, especially if a teacher's struggling, and helping them to grow, and being new to a district, just to have people that know what's going on pre-K-12. I mean, that really is the outcome that I think will be so powerful for our teachers.
Even this year, we spent quite a bit of time, significant amount of time in classrooms, working with teachers, helping coaching them, not doing evaluations, but helping coaching them, giving them tips, stuff like that, definitely, a lot of time.
So forgive me, I'm not the educator that Amanda is, so I don't necessarily understand all this. So if I'm making a leap here that isn't appropriate, that correct me. But I've heard people talk about people mentioning project-based learning a lot, but this sort of feels like we're standardizing things more.
Not at all. Not at all.
The essence of a transfer task is actually rooted in kids showing us in a new, innovative way that they can apply the learning that they got during the unit. So it's not necessarily at the end you take a test, it's at the end, how do you apply the stuff that you learned in a new and novel situation. So the impetus for understanding by design is not at the end of this unit, can I do this thing? Or at the end of the year, can I do this thing? But like in the long run, when we walk away from high school, what are the things that we want kids to know and be able to do always, right? And then we think in transfer tasks of that long-term thing. So I think about when I'm designing a history unit, in the long run, I want kids to be able to use evidence to support an idea about something that happened in history. So that's the skill and the thing that I'm working with. And then I'm going to think about how do I give them the practice they need when talking about the Civil War and learning about that. And like that's using that evidence can then take so many different forms that are project-based, that are innovative, that are not standardized, rote memorization, lecture, rooted pedagogy, which most of our teachers don't want to do. Like, that's not the way that we learn. And like, that's the way I was taught as a teacher very early on, and I know when I first started teaching, if I was still doing the things now that I was doing when I first started teaching, I would be a very bad teacher. Because it's no longer the way that our kids interact in the world or the way that our kids engage in the world, and it would just be bad for them to be learning in a situation that of how I was in 2003. Like I was a good teacher in 2003 when I started. I wouldn't be anymore because like we know so much more, and I know so much more about how to work with kids. Over time, you develop stronger pedagogy and develop better content, and you're always developing better pedagogical content knowledge when you bring those two together to think about this content with this material with these kids. And that's always the thing that we have to be mindful of, who's in front of us and what are the things that they need and what we want them to walk away with.
Let me just leave my comments anyway, and if anyone else has any, they can, with one request.
Sure.
And this is really, I guess, more from you, but from everyone. Please go back to the teachers and ask them how things are going before we start getting into next year. Let's, try, see where the pain points are for them, how they're interacting with all this, and just ensure that they're on board too with what we're doing and how we're doing it. And if there are some changes that need to be made, maybe there are tweaks and things like that, that we can do that. Because I just want to make sure that everyone feels like their time is being used to the fullest, and that what we're doing is benefiting, the kids at the end of the day.
I think you guys have been having those conversations as you're going, correct? Yeah, I mean, they're always assessing and asking.
More of like a survey, not just a sort of an ongoing thing, something a little bit more sort of confined and where you can get real data, not necessarily just anecdotal stuff.
And I think finding out how it's going to be helpful and beneficial to the teachers, because if we force them to fill out this form they're never going to use, they're going to see it as a waste of time, and I completely get that.
All of that, yeah. Absolutely. That's really important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're not leaving, are you? You're on your own.
No, don't all go.
You guys want to know.
Dr. Goss, I'm going to see if I can.
Do you want me unplugged?
Entertain it so that way you don't have to.
So you want me unplug in?
Unplug. Stay on.
Well, if I stay on it, you can't do it. It's one or the other.
Oh.
You have to change the settings. That's the issue.
That's what we're here for.
Where's you getting going?
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, I'm already on.
Good. Okay, so we did use a lot of colors, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't print that one.
Thank you for having us. We are going to take you on a little journey. We started out earlier this year unveiling our roadmap to student service, and I think it's a little bit of a long journey, and we know it's 9 o'clock, so we're going to try to take you through. We've added in a lot of slides that we were hoping to provide answers to questions you had asked us earlier on in the year. It's kind of hard to figure out how to reach back out and get that information to you. So we are going to start with our journey and just recognizing, I think Jeriel and I have said this quite a few times to all of you, is that we recognize this is a journey. We never want to become complacent, and I think we can do things well, but we always want to keep doing things well. And so we keep that in mind when we're working with our student service teams together, and just always trying to take us to better places. So with that, am I just doing it?
Yeah.
Okay. You have seen this before, and this is how we are connected to ARCH 2, which is social emotional well-being, under student services and SEL and equity. So when we look at this image, really looking at how do we get ourselves to a place where we're fostering safe and supportive learning environments. In order to do this, we need to have consistent and effective communication, but also increasing rigor.
Do we need to pause for a second?
What's that?
There's a question as to whether it's on HCAT. I don't know if that would be a question for
Oh, yeah, I just
Bruce
saw Dawn.
or Tom.
Dawn is.
Dawn or Tom.
Let me go back there.
I mean, it's showing on our screen, so that's why I assume it's working.
When people are not able to access it, so I'm not sure.
Is it that they can't access the presentation?
The presentation is only going to show when it's on the screen, but then tomorrow we'll be uploading it to the website as well.
No, they're not being able to see the meeting at all.
Okay, well, she's checking with
Yeah.
Dawn.
Okay, I think that's all we can do right now.
Should people get up and stretch?
Sorry to interrupt.
Do you want us to
Sorry
pause?
about
or
that.
We're never going to get on our journey, Jeriel.
Are we okay with going forward and letting?
I can see it on monitor back here.
Well, it's on the monitor here too.
It does.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else we can do about this right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to do that, as I had said, we want to make sure that we are providing consistent and effective communication across all parties, so with our students, our staff, and our families and community, but also providing rigorous opportunities, right? And so we talk a lot about continuing to raise that bar, and to do that with all types of learners is really important to us, and keeping that innovative teaching and learning, as they had just talked about, going. And if we do this, right, so we look at the NTSS, which for those of you that don't know, multi-tiered systems of support, that is our foundation, and that's what Jeriel and all of our staff have been trying to create. And we talked about this early on in the year. It is like building a school, right, from the foundation up. So in order to really do that and to really keep things going in a consistent and impactful and for longevity reasons, we need to start with our tier 1 and really build that within every classroom. And as we get better at that, we then can produce stronger and better tier 2 and then tier 3 supports. So sometimes we talk about things getting worse before they get better, and things getting really dirty and messy. And I think that that's where we're at right now, is we're recognizing the challenges we're facing, whether that's just in our educational system globally, and just looking at how do we start from the ground up and build stronger foundations.
All right, so I'm on, and one of the things that I wanted to share before I kind of get a chance to kind of discuss our journey so far is to say that also one of the things that Ms. Beatty and I talked about is in the summer is almost take our presentation and make smaller vignettes and record them and make them available. Because I think that one of the challenges is when we present, we know that what we're talking about, there's a lot of interest in it, and we don't often get a chance to share the journey. So essentially, we could have done a presentation for 2 hours, right? So we're trying to consolidate the work happening in a way that's digestible, but in a way that we can share so people can see the growth. So in that journey, one of the things we wanted to talk about was what are some of the things that were happening pre-2021, right? Because I think in order to see where we're going, we got to see where we were. So some of those things is schools had developed independent initiatives for SEL and equity, but there's limited district collaboration. So in other words, we had great champions at schools doing a lot of great work, but there was limited collaboration across schools to align to say, where are we going? We did have elementary schools engaging in PBIS, but I would say, and we'll talk about that later, it probably was low fidelity, which means there's pieces of it happening, but not to the full implementation of what it would look like. There was a lot of professional development happening, but it also was school-based, right? So also the learning that was happening was really directed at that school, but there was no alignment around what are the skills we're building across the board to meet some of these needs. Open Circle was an SEL program that was being utilized at our 2 elementary schools. Mood Check had started, I think, during COVID, but the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey has been happening for years, well over 10 years. And I would say in that year also, the district began to do professional development focused around equity, in which the central office and school-based administration did professional development around bias and racism, et cetera. So that work had started, right? So now we enter 2021, 22, just coming out of COVID. The district hired my role to kind of help think about, what we could start to build in a different way, and then what are some of the things that happened last year. So we had 2 elementary schools in Rams join a 3-year PBIS Academy with DESE. We also pre-planned before I had arrived, everyone in the district, every educator received professional development on the 7 forms of bias and responding to microaggressions across the board. we started to have a conversation. You hear it as people talk about the work, framing what is a safe and supportive school, right? It tells me that language is catching on because it's being utilized. As people present, I think even HEF talked about like the counselors creating a safe and supportive environment, right? So that language is catching on, but we really started framing that last year. Also, we engaged in something called data dialogues, which was inviting people from different stakeholders. We invited people from the school committee also who attended to actually have conversations, not about just school data, but also cross-sectional data, police data, community data. Because when we talk about mental health or we talk about community issues, it's not just something that lives in schools. It's something that we all have to wrestle with to figure out what are our best strategies. And then the other thing was that Open Circle closed. So Open Circle was a resource that was being used by our elementary schools, and Open Circle closed for business, and they stopped continuing the support. Open Circle was a resource that our schools were using that was not a train-the-trainer model. You had to send people out all the time to get trained in order to kind of be skilled in that. So we hadn't really built the capacity. So as changeover happened, some of that knowledge started to kind of leave the district as well. So now, fast forward to where we're at now, and this is kind of going to be the journey that we talk about today, the updates, right? I'm going to talk a little about what are some of the updates around our PBI schools and how do we know they're headed in the right direction. I'm going to talk a little bit about what are some of the data processes we started to do. Holliston High School just started year one of a 3-year SEB Academy with DESE, which is Social Emotional Behavioral Academy. So I'll explain what that is. At the district level, we convening some stakeholders from across our schools to kind of really envision what does it mean for central office, i.e. myself and Ms. Beatty, to support our schools in the trajectory, right? And we wanted to make sure that we had feedback from every school in designing that vision for how do we support that. We expanded professional development opportunities district-wide, also with SSP. For those that may not know, SSP stands for Student Support Providers, which is often school counselors, school adjustment counselors, school psych, etc. And we also developed professional development around crisis response if there ever was a kind of a mass casualty. How do our support staff support students for the emotional support they might need, not just kind of the emergency response? And then lastly, Miller began a 1-year of 3-year Culture Responsive Education Academy as well, and I'll give you an update of what that is. So let's start with what was the journey that happened district-wide. So at this district-wide level, we convened people from across our schools, school counselors, school psychologists, et cetera, to say, what do we want this vision to look like? How can central office support each of your journeys at your schools? And then through that, we had 3 sessions. We almost had like 3 retreats with that group together. The first session was we looked at kind of our cohesive systems around what's going well, what are our strengths, what are our gaps, what are our connections. The second session was we looked at what systems and processes do we have in place. And the third one was how do we set priorities based on that, right? In what will be happening over the summer is we're actually finishing a final report to say here's how we believe from this team that came together, district, i.e. Ms. Beatty and I can support our schools on their journey to build an MTSS system, right? That's why we're going to keep coming back to that MTSS structure, because if you think about that schoolhouse, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that's not just something for schools district to live by. Every school needs to think about how they support students across those tiers. So in this journey is really about how do we district help our schools get there, right? And we're in support of our schools. As I continue kind of in a conversation today, I wanted to kind of reiterate these 2 pieces. One is in the same tiers 1, 2, and 3, they mean the same thing as a schoolhouse. If you can see the triangle on the right, schools are situated, right? We are best research shows that our best efforts are at the tier 1 and tier 2. We support kids at all 3 tiers, but what we can do in the most skilled way is support the tier 1, tier 2. Specifically, research says, is that the tier 1, which is the foundation building for all students, if we get that right, we impact the kids at the higher tiered levels as well, right? But here's where the relationship comes in with our community partners. Our community partners, when it comes to mental health, are best situated to support that tier 3, right? Which that wraparound supports, the mental health supports, the psychiatric supports. this is almost kind of our relationship with what it looks like for us to work with community partners, right? Because community partners such as Holliston Youth and Family can support us with some of our students who also need the most support as well, right? It's important for me to kind of situate this, because as we kind of continue to build our system, it's important to understand what are things that schools can do really well, and then what are the things that we also need to work with our partners to be able to do really, to do better, right? And in saying that, I think the last piece to share is that research has clearly shown is that we know students and families experience trauma, chronic, acute and chronic stress, right? We just lived it through COVID, biological predispositions. What we know what can counteract that, and if you think of the scale, the biggest piece on the scale is the mental health, the SEL and mental health promotion for all, right? How do we build the SEL skills across our board for all of our students? That's the biggest weight on the left side to counteract all of the things that our kids have on their shoulders. So, I wanted to kind of give that piece in order to say, here's what the district team did. These were the 4 categories that our district team came up with around how we can best as a district align, right? The first part is across all 4 schools, district administration build a consistent understanding of what is meant by a multi-tiered system of support around SEL and mental health. When we talk about the system we want to build, we want everybody to understand it and know it. Because if we can all understand it and know it, we all can then engage in collaborative conversations around what to do about it, right? 2, select and implement a Tier 1 curriculum, K-8 or K-12, right? If we're going to think about the slide I just showed with the green, the Tier 1 being kind of the biggest, heaviest weight to counteract everything our kids have, then we have to get to a point where we're aligning what is it we're teaching around skills. 3, we want to develop a consistent system for implementing Tier 2 groups. So what I mean by Tier 2 groups is we oftentimes have really strong supports at the highest level of students who sometimes get there maybe through IEPs, through specialized services, but how do we help students who may not need that but do need some level of targeting support, right? How do we identify students who fall within that space and how do we support them? Which means we have to build a system for that, right? It can't just be because I noticed. We want data to be able to think about how do we get there. And then the last thing is we want to make sure that we can develop a data system to be able to have conversations around how do we support students and how do we allocate the resources that we have within our building to best support the need, not just based on gut, but based on data, right? Like this is what we want to build, and this is what our team came up with. One of the things that I was proud of, and now I'm going to talk about the Holliston High School, their academy, was that when I get a chance to share what the Holliston High School came up with, it's really in line to what we just discussed, which tells us that we're starting to kind of really see the same needs, but also wanting to move the same needle, right? So a little bit about what this academy is. Over the next 3 years, Holliston High School, they convened a team of educators. We had wellness educators, counselors, administrators, guidance counselors. Myself participated, where we're designing what it looks like to build MTSS here for SEL and mental health at the high school, right? That meant taking stock and setting priorities of what is it we have here at the high school, right? But being led by their own educators, right? Not being led necessarily by me. I facilitate and I support, but the plan that we're going to talk about or the goals that they want to achieve came from them, right? Which to me is key. So here's where we ended up with. A, build skills of all educators to incorporate SEL-related skills into their classrooms interactions with students, right? Now, we say that because we acknowledge that we know our teachers do SEL, but how do we get better at it, right? How do we continue to grow our skills so we meet more needs of students? How do we support each other, right? If we look at number 3 says support the adults at HHS with their own wellness and SEL needs. One of the things that we all know, very much aware, is that since COVID, we have a higher stress on all of our shoulders. And when we think about what it takes to be in front of kids and support kids, we need adults to also feel not just supported, but that they have the skills to kind of deal with the stresses that are on their shoulders too, right? So that's the piece. And then number 2 speaks to what I just spoke about at the district level. A, develop a data collection system for what does it look like for when we support students one-on-one. And that came from our student support providers on the team saying, we meet with kids all the time. So then we asked the question, how do we know not what kind of students, when you meet with students, how do we know we're being effective, but also how do we know what kinds of issues are coming to us so that we can be aware of trends so we can approach that, right? we really hadn't developed a system for that. We also really hadn't developed a system for how do we identify students in need and then get them to the right support. Holliston High School has a lot of amazing intervention points. But one of the things that the team identified we were lacking was a system to be able to identify how to connect them to the right point, and do our students know of all of their services available so they can also, if needed, be able to connect as well, right? This is what I mean by systematizing our structure. Not discrediting all the amazing work that people put in, but systematize it so we become more efficient in what we do here at Holliston High School. The next piece I wanted to talk about, and I know this is something that I think oftentimes people have an idea of what we mean by PBS, but not a full understanding of what essentially it is, so I wanted to kind of share with that. And I know this is it's a comic at 9:23, but I'll read it to you. But this is the essence of what PBIS is meant to be. You have a character that says, "What are you doing here?" And then they say, "I'm practicing waiting for the school bus." And then the character says, "Is that something you have to practice?" And the other one says, "It is if you want to be good at it." And the reason I add that is because the concept of SEL, the concept of PBIS, is to reinforce the things we want to see, but to ensure that we're practicing it. We can't just assume that students know these skills. We can't assume that students know how to meet those expectations. We have to purposely practice it and then develop systems to kind of enhance that. That's what essentially PBIS is meant to be. So what is PBIS? And I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like at Miller, right? So when they presented last week, was it 2 weeks ago maybe? 2 weeks ago, they did kind of their school presentations. What I did was, as I watched, I pulled out questions that you had or things that maybe we wanted to kind of reemphasize, and that's how we also put our presentation together. So Miller, their PBIS acronyms are resilience, integrity, self-awareness, and empathy, okay? But these values were co-created by educators, co-created with students. They pulled in students for feedback. The balloon was created by students that we see here. Students were a part of that. Staff were a part of creation of this. Then they also created lesson plans to teach what does it look like to be resilient in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the lunchrooms, in the cafeteria, and et cetera, right? They articulate what does it look like for this to happen across the board. And then, like we know of just good science, they want to think about how do we reinforce the things that we want to see, right? Now, sometimes when we think about PBIS, we think of just kind of that part, the reinforcement, which is kind of the sticker or the high fives or the bracelet, etc. But at the reality is, that's just a piece of a structure. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the thing. Here's the piece that I think that is the biggest growth for our PBI schools, and it's this next set of questions, which is purposefully, how do we purposely collect data that informs us on questions like, do our students and staff understand these values? Are our students exhibiting these values on daily experiences? If students are struggling to meet these expectations, do we have data around not just who, but where, when, how often, and what kinds of struggles are coming up? Have we designed a system where we can discuss this data with our PBIS SEL teams? Are we establishing feedback systems with our staff about the data? And are we using data to improve the system we're developing, i.e. RISE? This whole structure is what PBIS is meant to be, right? Not just necessarily sometimes the card of some of those things we see. It's this whole piece. And this data piece has been the biggest growth for the schools that have been part of this academy. So the next piece that I want to share in connection to that is something called Tiered Fidelity Inventory, TFIs. So TFIs is a walkthrough tool, not a walkthrough tool, but it's a fidelity tool that comes with the academy. The University of Connecticut and the Maine Institute out of Randolph have come in, and they've done this fidelity inventory with our teams and our schools. And what I've been, in all honesty, overjoyed to see is that last year, those are the blues out of 2 elementary schools, Placentino had a 60% TFI, which means they were implementing PBIS Tier 1 with 60%, and Miller at 40%. This red was just done within the last month by an external convener, and both schools were at 83%. Right? So that tells me that those schools are working at it. Now, this doesn't mean perfection, right? I can go to any school and say, oh, we need to improve this or this, but it tells me that they're working at it purposefully, okay? This is how we know we're headed in the right direction, okay? So what else comes with that? this is what some of the data that our schools get when they do this TFI. And if you can see, it's hard to see because they're all kind of shades of green. I can't really change the color, but that the right side here, they actually break it up between a score for your teaming structures, like how do you guys team and come together and talk, your implementation structures, and your evaluation structures. And if you can see the last bar, at Miller, they jumped up when it comes to implementation when it comes from last year, and when it comes to evaluation. Because they've established structures where they're going back to their staff to say, hey, here's what the data says, what do you guys think? Now in that, like I said, not perfection, but to establish a loop where you can have conversations across your school around, hey, we're seeing this trend in the hallway, what should we do about it? What do you guys think? In a collaborative conversation, that to me is a huge growth forward for where we want to be as a school. So what else, what other kinds of data are we capturing when we think about PBIS, right? So this triangle here, if you could imagine, is the same thing as that MTSS schoolhouse we showed, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. One of the things that schools who have PBIS, and to be honest, any school that is developing data systems, you want to have a way to track referrals to the office for student behavior, right? One of the things that this system does is it helps us categorize how is our school's triangle. So in other words, where do we fall in comparison to this triangle and what data says? So when we did the spot check, and this was piloted at Miller, and we just started this work, 94% of our students fell in the green. 3.6% fell in the yellow, which is like needing targeted support, which means that they may have had 2 to 5 like office referrals. And then we had about 2% who fell in the red in the tier 3, right? Now this is no means to admonish any tier, but is to say this starts to at least drive conversations to say, do we see any dips or any growth in any of these categories? And if so, what do we do about it? And it also counteracts the narrative. As a school counselor, to be honest, sometimes you leave school and you feel like, man, it just feels like everything's falling apart. But sometimes, to be honest, when you take a step back and you look at how our kids are performing, to be honest, most of our kids are usually doing pretty well. Most of our kids are meeting expectations, but we still want to have a system that helps us identify who's not and what can we do to help them, right? So this is kind of why having data like this speaks and supports a school. Next, when we think about those referrals the schools are building around when students need support, schools are now able to have conversations around referrals by time, right? Like what time of the day are we seeing spikes, right? What days of the week, is there something happening on a Monday or a Tuesday that for some reason might be leading to more referrals? And then they also can even have this data by month to see if over time, is there something happening at different months, like during MCAS month? Do we see rising referrals, and if so, what can we do about that next year to plan differently? Schools utilize this data not for the purpose of necessarily just supporting a student, but to kind of identify trends. And this box here came directly from a newsletter that Miller had shared with their staff. And to me, not even being in the staff meeting in the newsletter, here's what I got from it. They're obviously having conversation about reinforcing the values on what hallway consistency. And they're talking about transition lessons. That tells me that they're looking at data that possibly some of their rise in behaviors might come when kids are transitioning in the hallways. So at their staff meeting or in the newsletter, they're engaging conversations to say, what do we want to do about that? Right? It can't just be an answer from administration. It's that we own the school together. What do we want to do to help support our kids? So in essence, this is what PBIS is truly meant to be. 2 more slides. I'm going to pass over to student supports, but let me just say as I continue, I just want to say I appreciate everybody's kind of engagement with this at this time of hour, but I will say these are often the questions you hear about, like what's happening in this work, which is why I want to be thorough about what we present. One of the things that RAMS presented last week, they talked about kind of, they were piloting this restorative practice SEL. So I wanted to kind of explain what that was. So up here at the top of the slide, you'll see this is actually the law 603 CMR 53 around student discipline. And in that law, here's what it says. Schools must consider ways to re-engage the student in learning and avoid using long-term suspension from school as a consequence until alternatives have been tried. Alternatives may include the use of evidence-based strategies and programs such as mediation, conflict resolution, restorative justice, and positive interventions and supports. So when I arrived, one of the gaps that we saw was that sometimes when students had a discipline, like had an infraction, had a discipline. Sometimes schools wanted to create some type of learning experience to also like teach, because what we know about discipline is discipline without any kind of like reflective aspect to this really doesn't get you the benefit you want. But oftentimes what has happened was that they would go to like an amazing assistant principal when Ms. Beatty was in that role, and they'd say, hey, can you create this lesson on the fly while you're also doing your role, trying to put something together for a student? How effective do we really think that would be? Right? Probably not effective. And so what we know about this work is that we want to kind of think about what could we use to kind of frame the SEL experiences we want to learn. So what this Navigate 360 is a CASEL-aligned behavior intervention library where, for instance, and I'll just give you how it would play out, was that an administrator can say, for instance, I saw Jeriel destroy property. I can develop a lesson from this library to assign to Jeriel as part of its consequence, not to replace the consequence, but that is a learning experience. As the administrator, I can see your interaction. Every interaction within that module has reflection and talks about, you learn about the impact that behavior may have on others, but also you reflect on the behavior that you had yourself. And it provides a talking point, so now me, the administrator, can sit back with the student and let's talk about what you just experienced through this. And we're piloting this because we had a gap, right? And we know that alone wasn't going to solve, right? So that's what that Navigate 360 is. So far, RAMS has not just been appreciated, but has been really thankful for kind of the support of this piece. We're going to continue. This pilot is happening from now to next year. If we see the impact of that, we're going to consider it for the high school as well. But this is part of the work that we see. It's not just necessarily systems building, but it's also identifying the gaps and trying to think about what's the resource that is helpful to that. And then the last part is around, you heard Miller talk about being part of our Culturally Responsive Education Academy through DESE. So DESE offers like this whole list of different academies that schools can join around MTSS. So the background to this is about 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, Assistant Superintendent Menard had to do kind of what we call an audit with DESE, where they came in and looked at our supports around student supports and teaching and learning. And one of the things they commented was that they saw evidence of us starting to work on culturally responsive practices, but called on, we need to make sure we embed this and sustain this over time, right? Not just because we're starting it that year. So in that, one of the things we think about is like, how do we move that needle? One thing is to go to PD, but another thing is to say, how does it look like for me to implement this in my classroom, right? Or what does it look like for me to add this to my tool set? Because all of this work isn't like a thing additional I do, it's a tool of how I see the world, of how I teach, of how I implement this work, right? So part of this academy is a 3-year academy where the Miller School is being supported to every year have a small cohort of teachers go through this, right? So it's meant to be 8 to 10 teachers a year, with the hope that by the end of this academy, in 3 years, a majority of your school, 80 to 90% of your school, has practiced what it looks like to be culturally responsive, has practiced these 11 kind of core concepts of culturally responsive education, and built lessons around what it looks like. So teachers this year, for instance, they build lessons around, and I'll just give you one example, around relationship mapping in the classroom, right? And ensuring that not only they knew key pieces about the students around how they can augment our classrooms, but also they even commented around how they wanted to make sure that that happened for families just as well, like so they can get to know their families just as well. So that's just an example of that. And the purpose for this is to say, belonging, the concept of belonging doesn't just happen, right? My wife's an educator and a teacher. Culturally responsive education, understanding how race and racism impacts our classrooms, understanding how issues of equity come to play or issues of trauma impact our classrooms are not part of necessarily the educational experience in a meaningful way for teachers in their preparation in college. So if we want to get to a place where this is part of what we do, we have to build PD, not just a one-time PD, but like consistent PD where teachers get a chance to practice it, and almost like trying on an outfit, right? Like, does this fit? Does that fit? And how do I make it my own? So that's what this academy is meant to be, right? It's meant to be so that it's not a whole school approach, but it's a piece of your school every single year approach in that journey. Thank you. So now I'll pass it over to...
Just before you begin, Jerry, I just want to say, I mean, yes, it is a little bit late, but this is really important stuff, so don't, no need to sort of, apologize or anything for that, this is...
But I think, yeah, before we move on, I think this is, again, what you're hearing tonight is us bringing the strategic plan to life. And this is really phenomenal because the work that's being done district-wide by having this role in place and being able to support teachers, I mean, we're moving the needle on SEL and equity. Oh, and we'll reap the benefits of that.
And I would even say this is being driven by our educators. Yes, I'm the director of SEL and equity, but there's nothing that I'm moving forward with that has not been spoken about by our educators to say, we want that, we want this, hey, we need to track this. And we have our teachers saying, yes, we need to talk about data. Oftentimes, talking about data is really hard for educators because it feels evaluative. But what we're starting to kind of have conversations about is, it's not about evaluative, it's about how do we improve what we're doing? How do we develop a system? How do we get kids to the right resource? Nothing to do with me or you. How do we build a school that speaks to that?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Exactly. And I think to your point, it's the steps we're taking, right? We met with our student support team this morning for our final one, and it's almost like slowing them down, and that's what we need to do. It's people want to just fix and keep moving, and to do it right and to build that foundation, it does take time, and I think that's hard when you're seeing students struggle, for sure. So what I wanted to do, your special effects, Jeriel, is simply provide you with the trend in data. I know that earlier this year we talked a little bit about our struggling students and what does that data look like over time. So I did want to capture the data, which was a bit surprising to me to look at because I think we live in this world right now where we are saying everyone is struggling and everyone should be on plans and right? And so we kind of catastrophize a little bit because we are all in this for the right reason, which is doing right by kids and wanting to help them. And when we see kids struggling, it's hard to sit in that. So this is simply to show you where the numbers are so far as our IEP numbers have jumped a little bit, which is not surprising since last year from 489 to 506 kids on IEPs. You look at our 504 numbers, which are in the red, have gone from 188 to 200. Our ELL population is growing, and we've heard a lot about that and the need for more tutoring and things of that nature, which we've talked about at prior meetings. And then looking at our out-of-district numbers, which is something I'm really trying to focus on, and what, unfortunately, these numbers don't take into account is the increase in partial hospitalizations this year, which are a bit staggering, to be honest. And we've seen it very few down in Placentino, but the numbers do grow when you get from Miller exponentially into the middle school, and then it sort of evens out a bit in high school. And that developmentally makes sense, but I think it's higher than we've ever seen before, which is telling us as a team, what more can we do? What structures can we put in place here in district to help kids feel supported, help teachers feel supported, but also how do you make that, just as Jeriel was talking about, that Tier 3 community partnership work with us in helping families and kids in school. This is the breakdown by disability category for our IEPs, just to give you, a bigger scope of the types of categories we have within Holliston Public Schools, which has not really changed since we met in October and January. I had to put this in there because I feel strongly, and one of the things I want to shift in our IEP meetings is really putting the kids' picture up, because I think oftentimes we get into these conversations and we forget really what we're talking about. And so there is, as hard as this year has been for all of our educators and our students and our families, there's so much that we should really be proud of, and really the growth that our kids have made, the things that we are bringing into our buildings, the resources, the therapeutic dogs, the engaging curriculum, all of those things I'm going to talk about. But it's just really great, and I think it's easy to lose sight when we're in that mess that I talked about earlier, and it's easy to say nothing's working and where are we going. So I did this just to show the community we're doing great things. When I started to reflect on putting this together for everyone, I started thinking, where have I come since the fall? And I started off as an interim director here, and thank you to everybody, that I am now permanent director, which is great. But one of the things that I heard and needed to tread lightly as interim was this discussion around alignment, certainly tying it to the strategic plan, looking at what policies and procedures do we have in place, where are we lacking, where do we need to rebuild, where and how are we going to create more independent learners. I think we've fallen into a little bit of, I would say, kind of like this COVID trap of kids need more support, we need more staff, we need more paras, we need more this. And certainly we do need help and we do need support, but we also need to use our staff efficiently. We also need to give our kids a little bit of leeway to make mistakes and sit in that and learn. We also need to increase our rigor and see where kids are with that. So really looking at that and putting structures in place to help us start reflecting on that. And then looking at our communication in our student management system. I've been in the district a long time and know that there are parts of our systems through EastFed that have not been the most effective, have not, they've been challenging so far as releasing data. So we worked a lot, and kudos to Dan McLeod and Jody Renee Miller and Michelle LeMay, my people up at Central that are helping me get that going, but it's been a lot of work. So when we met back in the fall, we talked about student behavior being communication. And since COVID and coming out of COVID, these are the behaviors we're seeing from kids. And so what is that telling us? What would we do? What should we do, right? And so I think our mindset is, and I hear this in my job alikes too, is like lay the hammer down, set the limits, more discipline, right? But what is their behavior telling us? And that's really what we needed to work on with our staff, is looking at where are you seeing this behavior occur? Why are we seeing it? And what can we do then to help sort of get them back on track? And so we use this as a jump off point to kind of really track the steps that we needed to start taking. So really, if we were looking at this from a global approach across the district, is we need systems, strong, consistent systems, structure, and support, right? And if we do this, then we create independent learners that are engaged and invested in their learning. They want to stay in the classroom. They want to treat others with respect. They want to treat their buildings with respect. They're able to easily or more easily regulate their behavior, stay in control, use strategies that they learn through Tier 1, and socially connect. We've lost sight of how to socially connect, and I think we all can attest to that through phones and devices, is that kids struggle with that. Our littles, that pre-K bubble is that group that I really want to watch that over COVID didn't have their play groups, couldn't go to the playground and learn how to do, you know what I mean? So it's those things that they're lacking, that then we see them as 3rd and 4th graders that are very handsy, and why are they doing that? They should know how to behave. They don't, because they missed that, right? So these are all reminders of things that we need to keep on top of. So the team that I have with me is amazing, my SSAs, my special educators, my specialists, and we looked at aligning things as our startup block to create that foundation. So we worked really hard to create a comprehensive procedural manual that is all electronic. Everything is in there from top to bottom on what we need to do special education-wise, procedures, IEPs, forms, a consistent way that we all run meetings, a consistent way that we communicate with families. We looked at when are we writing amendments versus when are we, going to mediation, things of that nature. So everything is neat and tied up in a bow. That's on our webpage. The staff all have that. And that sort of was a sense of relief for staff, what I'm hearing from them. I met with every building special ed staff at the end of, towards the end of the school year, just to review that, and it feels good. It feels good to know they have a place where they can go, and everybody is working on a very similar process. Thing I heard through CPAC and through all of you was just that need to communicate to families. What is it that Holliston Public Schools provides? I think we fell into this little bit of a trap of let's not broadcast what we have because everyone will want service. Well, I don't feel like that's the best mentality to approach things, right? I think there's a way in which we can better provide people service if they need it, but help people understand what we have. And so we put together a family resource guide that I worked on with CPAC. And that is essentially starting from child find all the way through a child's journey of the Holliston Public Schools, where they go for help, what types of services, what types of continuums do we have, what do all of our acronyms mean. I think we often talk in our education jargon, and people are always looking at me like, what does that mean? So we tried to put together a little glossary of those things, and those are in multiple languages. That is one of the things that I have asked Kim Sexton, who's our greeter at Central Office, when families register. That's the link she sends out in their native language. And then that is also on every school's webpage as well, so that parents can access that at any point. MCAS determination, when I came on board, we were slightly cited for having too many students. We were going beyond the state threshold of 1% taking MCAS alts. And through my experience here in Holliston, and also just talking with staff, it was one, feeling the need of, they felt like in the earlier ages in determining MCAS alt, it was not wanting to provide those struggling, challenging learners with stress, right? That they didn't want to have them take MCAS because that might stress them out. And when we shifted our way of thinking of, let's think of it as a way of exposure. Let's thinking of it as a way of not counting it out, right? And not presenting it to families or to that child as a stress test, but more of an opportunity. And so we created, we used part of DESI's outline, but also created our own tailored HPS determination to look at and start having those conversations in grade 3. And I challenged staff with as many kids as possible, to expose them from grade 3 to grade 8 with the determination in grade 8, is this causing too much stress, and do we feel like they are not on a graduation diploma track, and then is it better that we shift that stress and provide MCAS alt as the option. So it's been great that the staff were really elated about it. I have really good feedback from parents saying, thank you, this is an opportunity for me to see what my child can do. And we've dropped from 26 MCAS alts to 8 in the district. So that's a really huge success to the staff. And then that final assistance support determination is something, when I came on board and talking with Dr. Kuska, was the large amount of one-to-ones that we have assigned to students, and really looking at, are these students in need of a one-to-one, or is that more restrictive and limiting in their ability to access education? And so what I don't think often do, but now we're starting to do, is go through a checklist at each annual review or 3-year eval to look at, do we still think that they meet that level of need with 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2? Or can we loosen up and fade that back a little bit? And what does that look like and why, right? So instead of, no, I just don't think, I think they still need it one more year. Well, why? Is it because we're nervous, that they're going to struggle? And that's okay. And that's down to educators feeling really invested in kids wanting to be successful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also allowing kids to learn and make mistakes and grow and use our staff efficiently, right? So it might not be that we need more paras, but can we use them in a different way so that they're providing more services? So that's been really helpful for staff. The other thing that you have heard myself and Dan McLeod talk about is our shift to special programs, which is going to launch in the fall. We're right in the middle of exporting lots and lots of data. So special programs is a part of Power School, so we will now become a Power School district where our scheduling, our grading, our discipline, our attendance, and then all of our student-related services are housed in one student management system, which is really great. So starting in the fall, we will produce all IEPs, 504s, and ELL plans through special programs. We will have a really nice feature of DocuSign, which means it's less paper, less ability to lose or misplace plans, keeping things confidential. It's easier for parents to just open that email and boom, sign, and it comes right back to us. It's really user-friendly for staff, so any changes made to an IEP or a 504, any staff that is connected with that child and has them, they will get an alert to say, check your IEP, a goal has been updated, or a service has been shifted. And so that's really great. We did do a pretty comprehensive training with staff through May, and I really do appreciate all the staff being so flexible and the administrators of buildings, because we had to do a lot of finagling and coverage to get everybody to those Zoom trainings, but we did it. We will do another refresher when we return back, and then we're going to do an overall training. It's not as comprehensive training for all staff, so that gen ed teachers, specialists, office staff will then understand what special programs is and be able to utilize and access it. The new IEP is rolling out, so DESE has launched a new IEP. Their IEP has not been updated since 2000, so it's 2023, and we need to finally revamp it. It is, the intention is to be written more so in student voice, so which I think is a really nice feature and sends a really good message. So the vision really is what I, as the student, want for my IEP. The goals and benchmarks, which we already do in this district, which is great, so I keep reassuring staff much of what DESE has shifted, we'd already been doing, so we're kind of ahead of the game. But writing goals and benchmarks from a skill perspective as opposed to just creating a goal around, say reading. But where and how are they going to implement that, and what does that look like?
Can I just interrupt with a super quick question?
Yes.
Does this mean for future new IEPs or for all the IEPs that are going to be rewritten to fit this format?
So what we have been, what makes the most sense of what I have told staff is we will write them as we go now. We're not going to go back and rewrite, but we will write as new IEPs come through. And that's basically what each district is doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. We held a family information night that was held through CPAC, so we brought in Alan Bloom, who is a really great special ed consultant and was part of the new IEP process through DESE. So we held a Zoom night, and he was able to talk to parents and answer questions on that, and we recorded that, and for those that couldn't make it, it's still on our website. Finally, our initiatives and supports, I just wanted to give some big news that's been happening. So our nurses, as you heard, got the Spotlight of Excellence. They are really doing amazing things, and I think often don't get the spotlight, and so it's really important for me to sort of shed that for them. They've worked really hard this year to really create good PD and good alignment across the district, something we really hadn't done too much with our nursing staff in quite some time. So they have aligned all of their protocols to include, their individual health plans, the medication, forms for all families. They worked really hard on their district webpage, and so that is much more user-friendly for families and has lots of really great information. They send out a quarterly newsletter with updates for families, which has been great, so communication is really on the up and up there. And I've also brought in 3 new AEDs that will be at the middle school and high school. They are all AEDs in each building, but we've increased more just for the need. Paraprofessional PD, we're going to continue with the 12 hours of PD into next year, which has been super helpful for them, and they've been able to do lots of different trainings with myself, with the BCBAs, with specialists, just to enhance their own work with students, which I think is great. And we are in the process this summer of creating a new onboarding system for all new paras. So looking at connecting them with a mentor within their building and creating modules that will help them better acclimate to what Holliston is all about and how they best can help kids. And then finally, our 5-town Special Olympics came back this year. We hadn't had that since 2019. So that was super awesome and hosted by Ashland with the football theme. And we had the most participants. It was so great to see. We had 35 participants, and they all did really amazing. It's such a great day, and lots of high school volunteers, so it was really wonderful to see. I'm trying to go fast. I know it's late. Sorry, everyone.
Don't rush, don't rush.
Some of the other work we're doing, as you know here, is we don't like to call our programs, we like to call them continuums, and because I feel like that is a much better approach because it doesn't have the family or the student feel that they are stuck. So there's always room for growth, there's always room for movement. So one of the things that I have noticed in this district is within our continuums, which are those bursts there, we have them in every single building, but what we didn't really have is a structure in place. So if you asked somebody to describe what BASIS is or Pathways is or Network is, they could probably do a pretty good job. But what we did was create descriptions that we would be putting on our webpage for families, and then we'll have an internal document that helps staff. It outlines what staff are assigned to each of those continuums and for what purpose. And then the biggest thing we really needed and really pulled off was entrance and exit criteria. And because that is so huge in order to create that continuum feel. How do we know when a student should be put in Pathways? If they're just having a hard month or going through something, doesn't necessarily mean that they meet that criteria for Pathways. It might mean that they meet the criteria for, some social emotional supports, but not necessarily Pathways. So we worked really hard with the continuum staff, which I think is huge, and then the help of some SSAs and our BCBAs to create entrance and exit criteria for all of those continuums, and then a method of collecting data so that when a parent says, well, why do you think my child's ready to exit, we can say with certainty, because X, Y, and Z, and here it is, and be able to show them that. So we're very, very excited about that. One of the new ones is our bridge continuum, which this is the continuum that we have just put in our new special ed staff at the high school. And we're really, really excited about this program in particular. This bridge continuum is a continuum that is part of the network basis at the high school. And the reason for this is twofold. One is we're starting to see the number in that cohort really rise from Placentino, Miller, Rams. So it's almost doubled, going from 8th grade into 9th grade to over 20 kids, which is really, really high because these kids are kiddos that are more on our life skills track or in the autism spectrum, or those kids that are falling in our small sub-separate group that really struggle, and this is more of our bridge part of that continuum, really struggle because the reality is if you gave them more support, if you were able to modify and adapt curriculum, it might take them 5 years, but they probably could graduate with a diploma. And so we were thinking about those kids saying, what do we do? Where are we missing the boat? And how can we really create something that is pushing those kiddos and pushing the rigor for them, but getting them in a direction where they can feel successful, where they can graduate with a diploma and might not be on a college track, but that's where through this bridge program we're also increasing voc skills. We're doing job coaching so that when they're able to move on, they have that skill in place and are feeling successful out in the community. So kudos to the high school staff of BASIS and Network in our transition program, along with Kim Condon and Laura Ryan and Carla Brady. All of these people really worked hard to push this, and we're super excited to see where this goes. I think as a caveat to that, what I am noticing is, and I probably jumped ahead too quick, but is our transition program 18 to 22 is we're losing lots and lots of kids to surrounding districts. So I'm paying for kids to go to a Hopkinton, to a Millis, to a Medway transition program when I know we could keep them here. We could provide them something in their home community, but we just didn't have that bridge, that cohort to be able to do it. And I start to see the light now of we're going to get there, and that's really promising to everybody. The final big focus across the district is that reading and language. That comes up quite frequently and really, to be honest, should. I think we've seen a significant challenge in reading and literacy prior to COVID, but with COVID really exacerbated it. So Kelly Camp had invested a lot of training into Orton Gillingham, and so that is something that staff are really excited about, really endorsed by DESE. It's endorsed by a lot of districts, and so we're going to keep pushing that. And this is the slide morning meaningful to you, is the training that we're investing in. So by this coming December, pretty much just about every special educator, unless they're new to the district, kindergarten through grade 5, will be trained in Orton Gillingham, which is amazing. That means that we can do Orton Gillingham not only at tier 2 level, but we can start embedding and helping our gen ed teachers with those practices in tier 1, and that's really where we need to push. I've shifted also to start including RAM special educators to be trained as well, and then a few high school. We don't see the need as much at high school, but we are going to have that small bubble of kids that are going to need it. And so that is what's called morphology. It's part of Orton Gillingham. It's just a different part that focuses on different aspects of reading at that age level. And then we are partnering with Landmark Outreach to create our language-based continuums. And so we started this year at Miller. That was the highest need for that, and that is going to be for kids in grades 4 and 5. Bless you. And we have created that structure in grades 4 and 5. And then this coming school year, we will be doing that, creating that program in grades 6 through 8. So those two language-based continuums between Miller and Adams can really communicate and collaborate together too, which I think will be amazing to help those kids. Really taking up a lot of time. We have Care Solace. I think it's important to just remind people of that. I put some data here just to show where we are at with referrals. Care Solace seems to be a really great support for us. We have provided mental health services for over 110 families, which is great. The warm handoff is their language for a staff referral. So 86 of those 110 came from staff, and then family initiated was 24. So they can go on to that link, which is on all of our web pages, and do those referrals as well. Jeriel talked about, and I just wanted to bring to light, this is our upcoming school year. We will be doing the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, so we have been doing that since the start of it in 2006. I've been working with that team for a very long time, and it's really great data. I think for the first time, probably with Dr. Kuska coming on board, is where we've been sharing that more with the public, which I think is huge. And it's helped us shift using that data in ways that we can increase mental health supports for kids. So that will be this fall in grades 6 to 12, and that falls every 2 years. So. And then finally, I just wanted to bring to light our journey from the student support perspective, and just showing essentially what I just went through. But I think Jeriel made a good point to me the other day. It's really important to have that almost memorialized so that we can all see the growth that we're making, especially in moments when we feel like, what are we doing? So with that,
we're going to do part 2 of our presentation.
Are you ready?
Is it an activity at least?
Yeah, there's an activity. All right, we're going to pull out a post-it. Put out a post-it.
No, I appreciate it. And
No,
yeah,
thank you very
certainly
much.
if there's questions.
I don't have a question, but I have to say the presentation is really well made. So the owl really caught my attention. So I was so happy when you explained. The later slides had all the explanation about the Orton Gillingham.
Oh, yes.
That was really well done.
Good, thank you.
I was watching that owl. I was like, so cute.
No, you go. Okay, yes. So a couple questions, but maybe I'll just do one. The tier fidelity inventory for PBIS, was that just at Miller?
No, all three schools.
All 3 schools?
Yeah, it comes part of the academy. So at the end of every academy, the end of every year, they'll do that fidelity inventory.
Okay.
As part of the journey.
I saw the jump up to 80%, but that was just Placentino and Miller? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
what was the jump for Rams?
Rams did it. They had a less significant jump. But when I created the slides, they hadn't had their score in.
Got it.
But what I will say is, and some of the members here were at a planning meeting that we just had at Rams, and Rams had a lot of, and they talked about it 2 weeks ago, had a lot of transitions. So a lot of their leaders who are leading some of that PBIS first year transitioned into new roles. Speedy came up here, so they kind of had to readjust. So I would say they didn't make as much growth as our elementary schools, but they are acknowledging it and planning to kind of speed up that growth, and that was part of the conversations we had to get there.
But so for the TFI on PBIS, how is it measured? Are we talking to kids? Are we surveying students? Are we asking
All the above.
families?
So the way it works is that, it's a research-based fidelity tool, right? So you'd come in and you, not a stranger, but someone from the academy comes in and you would stop and ask 5 students randomly, hey, can you tell me what is RISE? Oh, RISE is da-da-da-da-da. Have you ever has anyone ever reinforced or give you a sticker for RISE? Yes. Do you remember what it was for? Oh, it's because I helped my student da-da-da-da. Do you remember when that was? Yes. So that's a score, right? Like how much percentage does that happen? They also do that with staff. They meet with staff and they ask the same questions. So that's a piece of it. The other piece is they also kind of sit with a team and go through a whole checklist of like, do you have evidence of teaming? Do you have evidence of agendas that you've had? In those agendas, have you shared data with your staff? So it's almost like this whole, if you could almost like imagine, I've never flown a plane, but when you fly a plane, I assume there's a checklist of all the different things that you check off before you take off. A TFI is in essence, part of it is a checklist of all the things that a high-tiered PBI school would have, and then you would score that, right, based on how many questions you have, and they end up with a fidelity score. And the goal is, a school is considered to be implementing Tier 1 PBIS with fidelity with 70% or higher. The goal is 70% or higher.
So it's an assessment on the implementation, that it is being implemented, that people are using it, that they're familiar. Is there an assessment on its effectiveness? The hard part about what I would say about PBIS is that PBIS is a framework in a culture of what you're doing. It's not a specific practice, right? So you wouldn't necessarily measure the practice of PBIS. What you'd look at is correlated data. So you'd look at, what we know of high-functioning schools are, they have conversations around data trends and make decisions based on that data. Is that happening? Can they have conversations not just about that data, but across grade levels, across grade spans? Can they think about any subgroups within the building, students of color, male, female? Like, are there any data trends that we're unaware of? But then also, as they move into the space, they should be able to have the same conversation about a student who needs support, the same way that they had about the whole school, to do that as well. So what I would say is, what research tells us is that over a journey, right, it takes 3 to 5 years to implement a system or structure. Over time, what we should see is decreased office referrals. We should see decreased suspensions. We should see increase in climate and culture for staff and students. We should see increase in staff feeling accountability around data. We should see, so like it's correlative research. It's not like one-to-one, like I do this, we should see this, but it's correlative, like building a school culture kind of thing. Thank you. And Jess, this is probably more for you. You had gone through the data about IEPs, 504s, and out of district you talked about the increase in partial hospitalizations. And you brought up something interesting, that it was higher at middle school than high school. You said developmentally, but is there anything else driving this that we have a plan to work on? Meaning, I worry that our kids feel there's so much being offered at the high school, right? Between different levels of sports, to the clubs, to the activities, there's just so much. Kids do feel connected here. Is there any correlation? I mean, how connected are the kids in the middle school feeling? I know there's some clubs, not as many sports. I guess what's driving the higher numbers, if you have any insight into that?
Yeah,
And because I would have actually expected that you'd see equally high numbers, I guess, at the high school. And I'm just wondering the why behind it and how we're going to address, or how, thoughts on addressing it.
Yeah, that's the question of the day. One of the things that we have been working on is looking at whether or not we also do mood check at grade 6, which really does help, kids to understand how they're feeling, those depressive symptoms, what are they, when do you reach out for help? But it's also that tier 1 and that tier 2 level of counseling support. I think, and what I know in the work that I've always done is high school students are more apt to ask for help, or more apt to say, I have a problem, or I recognize what this is, whereas middle school students may not. So that fear of somebody seeing them with the counselor, or somebody seeing them crying, or more school avoidance. I think developmentally it does make sense. What it is that we need to do, I think, is provide more of that SEL support, but also really working with families on recognizing signs, and what do they do, and how can they get help for their kids, how do they have conversations. I think it's a very challenging time right now, to find your child support outside of school. And so if a kid is not willing to seek support in school, then you have this child who's isolated and not working on the very things that they need to. And so, those are conversations we have with youth and family, and that we're looking to kind of explore other options to bring people into schools or help with more of the mental health piece.
And so part of it is the communication with families. I'm just wondering if there's space to consider, back to school night, captive audience, everyone, at the very beginning of it, if there's a way to have a pitch to 100%. Tell people in person about these added supports, especially if we're seeing those higher numbers at the middle school.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great suggestion. And Jeriella and I have been talking about ways, we've mapped out some parent eds and how do we even record those, right? So that parents always have it, or that is, recognize a child struggling, then a counselor can then take that recording and send that off to the parent and say, I really want you to watch this. I don't know if you were able to attend, but this is a great, but yes, any opportunity we can to bring that to light, I think, is very important. Yeah. Scary conversation to have.
Are you done?
I am.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you both. I think you're a fantastic team, and I just appreciate all the work you're doing. So many of the things that you're talking about are things that that have been asked for or talked about, maybe not officially asked for, but discussed over the last 8 years that I've been on the school committee. One example is the language-based continuum. I'm just thrilled to hear that, because that was, I think, something that we were really lacking. But I heard lots of things in all of this that have been needs and wants for a long time, and things that I would never have even thought of too. And I'm just really happy with the direction we're going in. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank
guys
you.
both. That was great.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Very important.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Happy Friday.
Another hour, maybe?
Oh goodness, let's try not to do that.
Just grab my thing.
Yes.
Policy's done.
Policies done. So we're moving on to central office administrator updates, and hopefully I know Susan has one very important one at least, but hopefully the rest of them will be quick. And Keith has dodged all my questions. His ears must have been ringing when he saw my questions about the.
Well, he's on a vacation day to day, in fairness.
It's not
Not everybody knows you're kidding. I do.
Okay.
All right, I'm just sorry. I have so many tabs open now.
I think you need to plug back in too.
Yes, let me just find them before I put the wrong thing back.
That's enough so she can plug back in.
Oh.
Oh, right, that's the hard part.
Right, my second part of my presentation.
Are you getting your PowerPoint ready?
I got so many tabs open. I just... That's what I was afraid of. Let me switch.
Oh.
It might come up. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Yay.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so this year we have 10 retirees, and I wanted to make sure we gave them, last year we were able to get we started a new tradition that I had hoped to do again this year, and then it just got a little hectic at the end of the year. Last year we did a nice retiree breakfast, awarded certificates and a gift, and that piece will still happen very shortly, but we did not get to do the breakfast this year. But I did want to acknowledge the 5 people that retired throughout the fall. Patty Belforti was here for 13 years. Joanne Geary for 13 years, but she's still here. For those of you who know her, she's still filtering through, supporting us at the middle school, even though she's post-retirement. Doreen Parker for 21 years. Janet Prizio for 30 years. And Carol White for 35 years. That's a long time in extended day. And those retirees left earlier in the year, I believe, all into the fall before the break. And now, at the end of the year, we want to give a shout out to our 5 retirees that will be leaving us, unfortunately, on June 21st. Michelle Arger at 18 years in HPS. Kim Bedard, 18 years as well. Joel Bernstein, 31 years. We heard that when he was here. We knew he was exiting, and our students will have somebody else taking over with him. Tricia Clark, 18 years, and Mary Gowan, 17 years in HPS. So I did not total it, but that's a lot of years helping support our wonderful students in HPS. So shout out to all of them, and I will be seeing them shortly as well to hopefully be able to say goodbye in person to our 5 remaining retirees this year.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Is that, do you have anything else?
I don't for updates. I know we have a retention thing, but I'll do that when we finish up.
Jody, anything?
I do not.
Okay, and I will send all my questions to Keith on, because he gave us a memo just updating us.
Okay, did you want to go through that, or just?
Well, I mean, there are questions I'll ask for him, but just, it does show that everyone can see in their memo that our favorability has increased just slightly over the last month, so still pretty much right in line with where we were. Okay, so moving on to a quick staffing update, sort of going into the summer. I know there have been, as Terry Chamberlain mentioned, there have been some additional resignations, so we just kind of wanted to get an idea of where we stood.
Yes, so I just wanted to pull up, I think it was I'm trying to remember which meeting now, maybe 2 meetings ago, we had talked about retention, that we are seeing the trend that we had talked about for the last year or two, that all of us have been talking about as superintendents, assistant superintendents, when we're monitoring staffing, and also have seen unprecedented amount of turnover during COVID in 2019, 2021, and 21-22. So these are the numbers I shared with you 2 meetings ago. This was the 6-year trend here, 2017 to 18, 31, and this was all different categories, but 31. The following year, 48 turnovers, and then 19, 20, 41. With the COVID turnovers and the additional hires, there were 96 in 2021, 21, 22, 97, and I only had 26 as of the date that I showed this data before. So I don't have everybody in here yet because we're still compiling it, but I will just tell you comparatively what I can tell you for the last 3 years, showing us, thank goodness, that the trend is where we projected that it was going to be going down. 2021, I just grabbed the 2 categories quickly today. We had 65 teacher and paraprofessional resignations, retirements, various categories, moving closer to home, leaving the field. And then in 21-22, we had a total in those 2 categories of 83 turnovers. This year, and we will probably see a few more over the summer, but we're at 38. So it looks like we're at that pre-COVID number, or maybe we'll be at that 48 overall. But the 48 also includes any other categories in 2018-19.
So just, what are those numbers that you're talking about now?
I don't have those on here because I just got these numbers today.
Those are just teachers and para.
Right, because I'm going to try to compile and get you more detail on this.
Okay.
But just for teachers and paras, for 2021, there was a total of 65 turnovers. 21-22 was 83. then 22, 23 right now, we are at 38.
Okay, so there have been significantly more since you last reported this number.
Correct,
Yeah.
yep.
So not 26, it's...
Right, that was a...
That 26 is at least 38.
Right.
Could be higher, plus some potential. So, do you have just the teachers, and I'm not trying to discount the paraprofessionals at all, but I know that that's a sort of a separate sort of concern.
Right, so I think we had, 10 were the retirements that I mentioned, 5, I believe it's 5 paras,
Yeah.
look at the names again, 5 and 5. So we have 17 paras currently and 21 teachers, so that would be 12 for other reasons of paras.
No, I'm
and
into
6
history.
Oh, I don't have that level of detail right now. I mean, I can go through and pull it again, but this is where
Yep.
I have,
So there it is. Is that? But that's not updated for
I don't,
Okay.
unfortunately,
If you could you send that to us?
when I get the extra
you get the-
information.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on with Lisa, and I'll have that to you once we can, I mean, some of these just came in, so we're still
No,
trying to
I understand,
categorize it
yeah,
all.
Okay. Thank you.
So, like, even the retirements, that one of them was just added the other day. Tricia Clark sent me her letter, and she's still going to be around in the district, but not in that capacity any longer.
Any questions? Okay. Do we have any reports from any of the subcommittees? Yes.
The communications subcommittee met Monday morning at 9, and we went over the FAQ document that we're giving to the
Right.
community.
We're going to be talking about that shortly. Hopefully fairly.
Saj, report
Yeah.
out.
No. Absolutely. Okay.
Policy, we met last week and we went over all the policies that were discussed today. And we are still discussing, but we don't have another date for policy yet, right? So,
Okay.
still.
Anything else?
All right, then let's move on to old business and the school calendar changing PD days. Did we get a final sort of decision?
We met with the principals the other day to get their feedback and find out what, because one of the issues we ran into, as we talked about the last time, was we didn't have the MCAS dates. They came out very late this year, so that resulted in us needing to change that February date. So when we met with them the last time, we talked about taking the February 7th full-day PD day and changing it to January 31st, so moving it back a week, and then we would take the
January 10th, PD day, half day.
to January 10th. Oh, wait, this is not. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing, sorry. So we had January 10th as a half-day PD day, so instead we'd like to get rid of that half-day in January and make it a full day on the 31st. And then on the February dates, instead of having that January 10th half-day, we'd propose making February 12th a half-day instead.
Does that
So
push us to Monday for our last day of school, though?
It doesn't change the last day.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, because we're not changing,
Okay.
adding anything, we're just swapping
Okay,
off
I'm sorry.
half and a full.
So that's not up here, though. That's not as.
No, she didn't have that in there exactly
like
the
it.
way it should be. I'm not sure why. I don't know if she didn't get it. But I'll just show you, the end of the date hasn't changed, which is what that was already voted on. Because of the way the holidays fell, as I shared with you earlier in the year, they fall on weekends and don't have to be
For
taken
some
on a
reason, I thought
Monday.
you were switching a half day with a full day, but I was wrong, my fault.
No, we're just swapping a half day and a full day and swapping the months.
Okay, now I don't. You said you didn't need a vote, but do you want to vote anyway?
I don't feel the need, as long as you don't have any more discussion about it, we'll just.
Did we vote on it previously? Did we already
Well,
approve
You
this?
vote on the whole calendar.
The vote for school committee is on the beginning and the end, and then if we have snow days, then I have to bring it back to you each year to say, we have to revoke the
Right,
last
but
day.
have we already voted the beginning and the end?
Yes, long ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long time ago.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Has everyone any other questions?
All right, so we'll make those changes and
Yep.
get it on the website.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So our meeting schedule.
So moved.
Yeah, those are
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Did we talk about that at the last meeting, the conference? Did we talk about that last time?
Perfect.
Great.
Changing it to 11
Awesome.
too for the
Yep.
conference schedule. So, all right.
Fantastic.
Okay. We voted it, it's done. At 11, no, wait, no, 10:26. All right, program of studies.
We didn't have any changes that were brought to us for the program of studies at this point. I do think it's a process that we need to move towards, and, we should be, if we're having any part of your policies, to be made aware of, at least, of curricular changes. So as we start to make curricular changes in the review process and create new courses, we should be bringing that back. I think we're allowed, per the policy, to move forward and designate, but sharing those with you, but I don't have those updates available tonight.
So there's no new courses next year?
Well, I believe there are a couple of
Courses that
the
he
two.
mentioned in anthropology. Yes, at the high school, too.
Can we just maybe put that on the August agenda to get that update?
I think that would be helpful, yes, because I didn't get the update in time to bring it to you.
Okay. Okay, let's do that. So moving on to revote of ARPA funds. So the only thing about that is, as you've all seen the memo, you all have the memo. I think it's great that we have a cost now, and we're going to go forward with the fixing of the exterior wall for the long overdue fixing for the music wing. And I want to. We need to go back to the top, but I did want to sort of maybe see if we could talk about this instead of a budget meeting, to talk about it, only because I just want to see what else there was potentially on the list that is not on the list, and how we're best going to sort of fund things. Some of this we could move to a capital request if we needed it to. So just, are there things on there that maybe couldn't be capital requests that we need, that we could be using this money for? I don't, if some of the things maybe to supplement some of the stuff that we heard about tonight, for, if they're bridge operational type costs. So before we sort of, the meeting for ARPA isn't until July. So I guess maybe a vote to seek $325,000 from ARPA for these type of things, and then we can.
I guess, would it make sense, looking at what's right here in front of us today, to vote for the 325 to go to ARPA and ask for that? But what we're talking about is having also a budget meeting, just to go through and ask a few more questions about this, make sure there's nothing else that should be added, so we'd only come back to the full committee if there's some, something of concern that we want to share, or if there's any additions. But because we're hoping to not have to do that, we'd ask for the vote tonight, but then we'd further explore this in budget before the July meeting, just to make sure we have any questions answered.
Yeah, can I just clarify? So
Yes.
if you remember when I did the budget presentation, because of the full day K being a big ask for the town, we offered to ship ARPA and ESSER funds, and I identified which would be for which. So I didn't put the ones that are ESSER that we're moving forward, like the OG tutors. And so the $75,000 was one of those that was on the budget to use ARPA funds for. The $150,000 was, I think we were talking about ESSER, but we're now asking to shift it to ARPA. And then the $100,000 wasn't on there because we didn't know what that fix might be. So now we have a pretty good idea that would be. The one thing that I didn't put in here that we talked about before was that $250,000 for the dimmer switch, because we decided that's probably not a good use of funds right now with these other needs. So this money is already allocated by ARPA to the schools at this moment, because they voted it for my multi-year process, and I was going to be getting $325,000 to put towards full day K last year. So the vote would be to actually, instead of allocating this money to full day K now that's appropriated, to allocate it to fund these projects. And that's why we held off till town meeting to request this, and we would just go back to ARPA and ask them to allow us to shift the funds for these.
Right. That's, the money does go back to the town, and then we ask for it to get.
Well, it hasn't come over yet, so I guess.
Right, and from my understanding, we have the support of the town administrator to do this. I'm just saying, I just want
to make sure it wasn't people thinking we were asking for more money.
No. I get, but I just want to make sure that we have, that the school committee has properly vetted all the other potential uses for this before we go forward with the final sort of commitment.
So I am comfortable voting on this tonight, but I do think that budget just wanted to get in and ask a few additional questions to make sure, and then we wouldn't come back to the full committee unless there was something of concern.
Right, so what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to approve this ARPA request as presented, contingent upon a budget committee review.
So moved.
Second, by Lisa.
All in favor? Aye, that carries unanimously. Thank you. So now the news, oh God. This probably should have done this a little earlier in the evening. Because it is important. And I know you guys worked really hard on it. I think
FAQs.
The FAQ. No, sorry, yes, we're talking about the FAQs, not the newsletter.
I can't even remember where
we put it.
Where we put it.
When somebody else finds it, tell me. I'm looking too.
Oh,
I have it, I think.
You don't need it up on the screen, do you?
We're going to need it up on the screen, yeah.
Want me to share it with Susan so it's like fresh?
Yeah, sure. That'll be easy.
Yeah, there you go.
Has anybody found it?
Yeah, I have it.
I found it up on my computer.
I just shared it with you, Susan.
Okay.
Did you?
There we go, yep.
Amanda, will you share it with me as well? I'm not. I'm 2 steps behind.
So-
Anyone else? Yeah, me too. I can't find it.
So my overarching comments are...
can't share it with you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay. I'll look
somewhere.
Can I just send you a link to it or
No,
something?
I'll send you guys the link. Dan, you keep going. I'll send them the
Okay.
link.
So my overarching views, I really appreciate the communications subcommittee doing this work. I think it helped a lot. I think that for some of them, I think that maybe we're not recognizing that there are pain points and things that we still need to kind of work on, or have, we recognize that there's some issues that need to be sort of ironed out. For instance, with French immersion, I mean, I'm just hearing a lot of sort of still some not concerns, or just sort of like that with the new curriculum coordinators, there's just some pieces that need to be ironed out. And I don't want, yes, we're absolutely not planning on getting rid of French immersion. School committee, we have to vote on that. There's no, certainly support from us. There's no support from Dr. Kuska. But that at the same time, there are some things that, can be looked at to potentially improve the overall how it sort of flows. I don't know how to put that.
We say that.
We say that.
Did you update it to say?
No.
The district is engaged in an equity audit to ensure that these programs offer equitable access to resources and materials, and that families feel these programs are options for their children. We will continue to look for ways to find additional support for these programs.
We
So
can't
we're
really be more
basically
specific
saying
than
we're
that.
not changing them, but
Okay.
the reason that they're being brought up is because we're trying to make them better.
Okay. But just to be clear, we are going to continue to work on them. All right, good. I'm sorry.
We can't really be more specific than that at this point, because we don't know.
So I assume everyone has had a chance to read this. Instead of going through line by line, because then we will just get into grammar stuff, and we can't do that right now.
Right.
So has anyone had a chance to read these? Do you want to take some time to silently read them to yourself and then ask questions? I'd like to not rehash each one.
Right. So what?
You're going to, and remember, we're going to have a chance to expand on this at the forum.
Right, we're going to
And we could always put out an updated document after the forum reflecting some of the answers to the questions that come up from the forum. So this isn't like a one and done kind of thing.
No. Right. This is hopefully to head off some of the questions from and just get some information out.
And I think it will. I think it will
Right.
do that job.
Okay.
Do we really want to have it in the library? Is this going to be big enough?
Yes. I think it's more collegial, I think.
We'll need a lot of chairs. Hopefully, who knows? I mean, maybe nobody shows up, but I certainly hope people.
When we did the Star Times Forum, we got a pretty good crowd, and we did it in the
I
auditorium.
really don't want to equate this to that.
Yeah.
What's the last time we did a community
No, I
forum?
get it. You're right.
I still think it's probably a better venue.
Well, just make sure, somebody's going to have to make sure we have a lot of chairs.
Okay.
Because we could have, I wouldn't be shocked if we had 100 people.
Is everyone comfortable doing it in here? I do think it makes it more of a conversation rather than sort of a auditorium-esque type of thing.
It just seems very formal in an auditorium that we're presenting. I mean, this is not about presenting, it's just we're here to...
My hope is it feels more like a conversation.
I agree with that, as long as we set up a lot of chairs.
Okay,
How do
gonna
you
set up
plan the
chairs?
setup?
I'll hire my
it all
desk guy,
depends.
Jody. Would you help me set up the chairs? Because
I've been debating, do we set up a line of tables for us and the administrators, or we just set up chairs and just sort of sit there? I mean, I don't,
Let's keep it as casual and approachable as
We don't know
possible.
what's going to come. We
I
can
mean,
bring chairs in here and add more.
no, I'm talking about for us. Do we want to be behind that, you know?
I mean, I think one thing is that we may need access to pull up a document, like we're not sure what additional questions we might get, so we might need to be able to pull something on a computer, so having a chair would be awkward for that purpose. But I think some of us could be at the table, and then we have, my hope would be that our administrators that are coming to attend would not necessarily sit at a table, but if they had to step up to a mic to answer a question or something, would just sit at the table.
I think we have to be flexible and read the room. If it's 15 or 20 people, it's very different than if it's 60 or 70 people, right? So I think we can make a game day decision. Right?
Yeah, as long as we have, I'm just saying, as long as we have enough chairs. And don't we have building people who can, like that? Seriously.
Well, we don't have anyone to set up this room. HCAT's been very good to help us, and that's something that I think we need to work on, is being better prepared.
I'll come help set up. That's fine.
But I'm saying, we'll find someone that's like that.
Okay, so as far as the FAQ goes, is everyone comfortable with that? Because we need to send that out tomorrow with just a reminder for questions. If anyone is still watching, I would appreciate, I know we said 48 hours, and that's still, we're going to hold to that, but there's the complexity with Juneteenth being sort of a holiday and in there, and people, so the earlier anybody gets us the questions, in the note we send out tomorrow, I'll sort of reiterate that 48 hours still, nothing's changing, but if you could get it to us, you know, by close of business Friday, that would be also, or earlier, that would be greatly appreciated.
I think only 3 people so far have put in questions.
What's that?
Only 3 people so far have put in questions.
I have 6 or 7 or so. I haven't necessarily added all of them to.
Oh, okay. You probably have more.
I have a few. You have.
No, because the sheet that I went through, 3 people on multiple pages, sometimes multiple questions, but same person.
It's a few more, yeah. But yeah, there have not been like a tremendous number of questions. Yeah. But also, I think, you know, we sent it out a week ago. I mean, you know, it's people.
There are probably people who will turn up.
Right. Okay, so then at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the FAQ.
We still need to go through it.
Oh, you still want to go through it?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, there's still, I mean, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but there's some,
Okay.
there's a few questions in here.
Okay, then let's do that. then.
Judy, on what's going on with math levels at Rams, have you reviewed that? Do you feel like that's the best way for us to express all of that? I guess
Briefly, she did. I was trying to, I don't think you had.
I have a little bit of a concern about whether we've addressed 8th, where it says,
Oh, the other thing, we were going to move something to the more, what we viewed to be as more,
No.
no,
Okay.
we could
No, thank
argue all
you.
night.
No, thank you. But there is this ad of what's going on with the teacher contracts that was added. I don't know that anybody's read that. There's a
Yeah, we
question
need to
mark in
talk
there.
about that for sure.
Like, that's totally new to the communication subcommittee as well.
oh, who added that?
Cynthia.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, where are we?
I didn't
At
see
the
that one.
very end of the document,
very
it says,
bottom.
what's going on with teacher contracts? And then the answer is, all public school contracts are available to the public and accessible through our district website. There's a link. There are no contracts, question mark, that are currently open, having recently settled the secretary's unit last week for the 23-26 term. Is that true?
There are none that are, no more that are ending this year. We are done for this year. Next year.
Is it accurate to
will
say
be the
there are no
last year,
contracts
so-
currently open?
Correct.
All right, do we want to keep this in here?
I don't necessarily see I mean,
I don't know if it's been a question or not, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I'm not against it. It's not,
No, it doesn't hurt, but at the same time, it doesn't, I guess there's a link so that people can go and see the contracts. I mean,
I would take out having recently settled the secretary's unit last week for the 23. I don't think we need that. Can we just say what's going on with the teacher contracts? All public school contracts are available to the public and accessible through our district website, period. There are no contracts that are currently open,
can we
period.
change that to what is going on with the union contracts, or what is going on with something,
Yes.
because it's not just teachers?
Yeah. I'm okay with that. Short and sweet.
Okay, I mean, I don't think anything else, the little changes that I made after communications were non-substantive, which is what we agreed on in subcommittee. All I did was I changed some of the titles, I changed to questions just for consistency, and then I did little tiny
Like grammatical
things. Susan went in and did a few edits just to make things more accurate. I looked at all those edits. I'm happy with all of those. So I don't have anything else, unless anybody else does. Sorry, I'm kind of taking over. I forget I'm not communications chair.
I forgot. Never apologize for that.
Oh, man.
I'm totally fine with you. I looked at your edits. The only things that are new to me are the stuff that Cynthia added. You should pretty much talk about that. She mentioned having more visibility into the turnover numbers, but we just presented that.
And I will have.
You'll have those for the meeting?
Yes.
And also, because that's also another question.
Correct.
But it also keeps changing, so we discuss it.
So I'll do it as best
we want to put
we
it
can
in this
get,
document because
we went with the best information we had.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's great as it is.
Moved by Lisa.
Second by Minnie.
Okay, all right.
If there's dissension, we'll.
Okay, all in favor of review?
No, we have to have a move in a second.
We did.
Here she is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought you moved and
I did move, I didn't hear the
Minnie
second.
seconded it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second.
So, and the motion, just to be clear, is to approve and release it or send this out tomorrow with you giving me the ability to make any minor typo changes. Okay. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Dawn is absent. Okay, so that leaves, the last thing is just to go back up to the first thing. And so Cynthia had emailed me, she did say that she would be willing to serve on the, so we're talking now about the collective bargaining liaison / subcommittees or whatever, what have you. Cynthia did say that she would be willing to serve, but it would sort of be up to us on the teacher contract. I had sort of put together my thoughts, and I sort of wanted to do this now because we do have sort of the summer where potentially, yep. So anyway, so my suggestion is for the teachers liaison to be myself, Amanda, and Dawn. For pairs to be myself or Sarah, Cynthia, and Lisa. And then for the cafeteria workers, Cynthia, Sarah, and Minnie.
Sounds good to me. So moved.
So, do you want me or Sarah on the pair? I just don't. I'm trying to,
Can I clarify, Dan?
Yep.
The cafeteria is a non-union group.
So we don't need.
They don't.
We've always been involved.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
All right, because I thought Keith was just doing them.
It's a whole thing.
Oh, okay. I didn't think we had been in the last since I've been here. So okay.
So
Yeah, we have. I mean, at least going back.
So who's in the cafeteria team beside me?
Cynthia and Sarah.
Right.
Okay. And
Good, we knew.
do you want pairs? Okay, I'll take it. All right. So so with me and this pairs. So.
Fantastic. So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay. That passes. With that done, I think, am I missing anything?
Did you do the warrants?
Yes.
You did? Okay,
Yeah.
it's been so long.
That's what I was going to ask. I wanted to confirm.
We voted on the warrants except for the minutes from last week.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah, we did, because we talked about the minutes from last week.
Yeah.
We took a motion. Okay. So with that, our next scheduled meeting is August 24th. That's the end of the summer. And so I will now take a motion to adjourn from open session to executive session, from which we will not return for the purpose of discussing the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints of, or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, or to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, which I do.
Moved by Amanda.
Second by Dawn.
This requires a roll call vote. Sarah?
Yes.
Minnie?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yep.
Lisa?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And I, Dan, am yes. With that, we are adjourned. Good night at 10:45.